Chapter 301, Persuasion, the Birth of the Grey Knights. Sanguinius' voice shot up, filled with incredulous shock. Axis, are you mad? Lorgar? He is a traitor, an abject blasphemer. He is one of the ones who brought the Chaos Gods into the Imperium, turning countless brothers against one another and ruining innumerable lives. You want a traitor who betrayed his father, betrayed humanity, and broke every sacred oath to write the foundations of faith for billions of Imperial citizens? This is the greatest blasphemy against the Emperor. Magnus's expression turned grim at once, mirroring Sanguinius's outrage. Axis, this proposal is insane. Lorgar's crimes are endless. His mind has long since been corrupted by the demons of chaos. You want him touching the core of the Imperium's future faith? That's like pouring poison into a pure spring. He would only inject the twisted doctrines of chaos into the holy texts. The result would not be a religion that venerates the Father, but a malformed monster that becomes a breeding ground for chaos. They could not fathom why Axis would even suggest such a dangerous idea. Lorgar was a betrayer. How could he be trusted with scriptures so central to the Emperor and the Father? This was a question of whether the Father could hold back the Dark Emperor on the Golden Throne and the tides of corruption behind him. One small mistake could doom humanity and perhaps the whole cosmos. Axis, faced with Sanguinius and Magnus's fury, remained unusually calm, a knowing half-smile playing at his mouth. He raised his hand to still the two of them. "Can you both please calm down? I didn't say I'd let him go free, only that I wanted him to write the scriptures. The doctrines and texts Lorgar produces can be reviewed and edited by us. What is there to fear? Besides, the Pope of this state religion won't be him. Sanguinius, it will be you." Axis went on. The Archangel Sanguinius, alongside the priests he had founded and the paladins, whether space marines or mortals, would be able to cultivate the holy light power. Sanguinius alone was the perfect candidate to be Pope, and an immortal one at that. So long as Sanguinius remained and continued to gather holy light for the Emperor, Huang Lao Han would be far stronger after 10,000 years than in the original timeline. The stronger the Father was, the slower the Dark King's rise, buying them invaluable time to prepare. "You're being naive, Axis. Lorgar will never agree to write those texts," Kasha said. She could not see what her husband was thinking. Lorgar had been defeated and captured by Khorne, one of their sons. There was deep hatred between him and their family. "Trust me, he will write them," Axis answered. "If he doesn't, we can use the Emperor's holy words he wrote before." The ideal was to have the original author compose the religion's tenets, then refine them. Failing that, Lorgar's earlier writings were not useless. "Sanguinius," Axis continued, "you could be a protector, a chief inquisitor of this new faith, but you're the best candidate for Pope." Sanguinius opened his mouth, then let out a hollow, bitter laugh. Axis was right. Among the surviving Primarchs, if they absolutely had to pick a pope for a state religion, Sanguinius was the only suitable choice. That was assuming Lorgar's betrayal. Had Lorgar not fallen, he would have been the natural candidate. Even if Lorgar now agreed to help, Axis would not release him. "You see, Sanguinius," Axis said gently, "you are an archangel. After the Ascension ritual, your wings have turned golden. You look chosen by the Emperor. Iconography the people of the Imperium and other space marines will accept. This religion we establish will be different from the rotten one of the later timeline, because the Primarchs will not abandon the Imperium this time. Most importantly, Sanguinius," Axis added, "the birth of a state religion is crucial to the Emperor." Sanguinius sighed helplessly. "All right, how do you plan to convince the other Primarchs?" "We three can make many decisions together," Axis said. The situation now was entirely different from the original timeline. There, Guilliman had near absolute dominance. He had carried out disarmament and centralized control. Now Guilliman and Axis stood on more equal footing. Because of special missions, Axis, Magnus, and Micardo could, if needed, oppose Guilliman. Guilliman's role would be to manage the Imperium's day-to-day affairs, governance, internal development, economic strength, planetary construction, nothing more. I think Lorgar's earlier writings are probably adequate, but this once I'll trust you, Axis. You and Magnus carry heavy responsibilities, Sanguinius said. Good. Sanguinius, you go back first. I'll take care of the rest. I will personally go and persuade Lorgar, Axis said. Sanguinius nodded, greeted his sister Kasha and his nephew Kratos, and departed. He was to return to his legion and tell his sons that the Red Thirst curse had been lifted. What had been a curse would now be a blessing, turning the Blood Angel's battle transformations and the holy light power into gifts for his progeny. After Sanguinius left, Magnus's gaze turned to Axis. When will you speak to Guilliman? The establishment of this state religion, and the question of Lorgar authoring its texts, needs to be brought to the regent. Tomorrow, Axis replied. I'll talk to Micardo first, then handle Guilliman. Magnus, when will you begin your ascension? Sanguinius' success confirmed Magnus's plan. Now only the Lion King, the Wolf King, and Magnus could perform the ascension ritual. I just descended from the golden throne, Magnus said. Let me recover my strength first. I will complete the ascension ritual before the Xenos War. He needed to restore himself, adjust to optimum condition, and become acquainted with the holy light power. Good. Everyone's tired. Go and rest. Kratos, you should leave too, Axis waved. He and Guilliman had many matters to discuss. For now, Axis and Guilliman were the highest decision-makers on the surface of the Imperium, but because of their special missions, Axis could call on many Primarchs to counterbalance Guilliman if needed. As long as his demands were reasonable, Magnus, Sanguinius, the Wolf King, the Lion King, Rogel Dorn, and others would largely stand with him. I won't interfere, Magnus said, nodding. He rose and left Axis's chamber. I understand, Father. I'll return to the Legion to handle things, Kratos said, bowing to Axis and Kasha before turning to go. Axis, are you sure? Kasha asked. Don't worry. Get a good rest tonight. Tomorrow morning I'll speak to Guilliman, and I need to see Micardo, Axis said, patting his wife's shoulder. There was a lot to settle. The night passed quietly. Early the next morning, Axis went to Micardo's domain. Master Micardo, he called. It's you, Axis. I heard about yesterday. Sanguinius recovered quickly, and his legion's sons escaped the curse because of you. You are the Imperium's pride. Training you was Nio's best decision, Micardo said with a smile. You flatter me, Master Micardo. I must thank you and the Emperor too. Without your help when I first arrived in this world, I wouldn't be where I am, Axis answered. Ha ha, no modesty with me. I still like you as you were, Axis. Tell me, what brings you? There is something I must discuss. Magnus, Sanguinius, and I have decided to establish a state religion, and we want your support. Micardo considered, then sighed. I understand. I will support you. After all, everything we do is for that plan. Once, he and the Emperor had tried every means to eradicate religion from the world, to make humanity believe only in reason and imperial truth, but things had taken another course. With your backing, the religion can be born. For writing its texts, I want Lorgar to do it. No, Micardo replied immediately. Find someone else. That man betrayed us. He is not to be trusted. Like Sanguinius and Magnus, Micardo was initially adamant against Lorgar writing the texts. Master Micardo, Axis said, I learned some intelligence about 10,000 years hence from another Khorne. The key reason the later state religion was founded was that a group of mortals who worshipped the Emperor unearthed the Emperor's holy words, words Lorgar once wrote. We must use that material. If so, why not let him write it now? Will he listen to you? Micardo asked. If he doesn't, then he must die, a complete death, Axis replied confidently. And this is his lifelong obsession. Lorgar has always been susceptible to certain temptations. Writing these scriptures would satisfy him. Besides, he has made pacts with Khorne that can break his last psychological defenses. I understand, Micardo said slowly. You can let him write the texts, but we must scrutinize every line. There can be no opening for the demons of chaos. Don't worry, Axis said. The future state religion will use the holy light power Sanguinius has developed. It's akin to the Emperor's own psychic power and strongly repels demonic entities. Once someone turns to the Chaos Gods, the holy light will abandon them. A miraculous power, then, Micardo murmured, eyes brightening. That gives me an idea. Axis, before the Emperor sat upon the golden throne, he ordered me to carry out a secret task. Micardo looked at Axis with renewed excitement. The holy light power could create an opportunity Micardo had long wanted, the birth of the Grey Knights. What task? The Emperor ordered me to form, in secret, a special Space Marine chapter. They would be grown from a newly cultivated gene seed, endure the most rigorous training, and each would be a potent psyker. They are to be the Imperium's covert weapon specifically against daemons. The Emperor named them the Grey Knights. Axis stiffened. This was the Grey Knights the Imperium would one day know, yet they had not yet been completed. If this unit can also use the holy light power you mentioned, they would be unstoppable, Micardo continued. The Grey Knights were already powerful psychers. Adding holy light to their arsenal would make dealing with daemons far easier. That's no problem. Holy light power can be taught, Master Micardo, Axis said. He hesitated a moment, then asked, I'm curious, whose gene seed will the Grey Knights use? The Emperor hinted it might be based on his own. Chapter 302. You build Grey Knights, I build Paladins. Hey, kid, do you think their gene seed is related to you? Micardo asked with a teasing tone. Axis nodded. That's right. If we're talking about resistance to the warp, my gene seed is the best and most stable. Besides, the Emperor once spoke to me privately. He told me to use my gene seed to form a small chapter specifically for fighting space demons. Micardo chuckled. If we'd used your gene seed, we'd likely have created nothing but Golden Knights. He grew serious. Your gene seed was extracted while you were in your Super Saiyan form. You'd lost the Great Ape transformation, and the key dynamics were altered. That's why it's barely compatible with ordinary mortals and has little room for further modification. The Emperor and I did consider it. Your gene seed was our first choice, but it would only ever produce members of the Golden Legion. That doesn't fit our concept of the Grey Knights. He leaned closer. The Grey Knights must be consummate psychers. Each of them has to reach the highest possible levels of psychic aptitude. So the Emperor and I took another route. We used Magnus's perfect gene seed as a base, then blended in elements of the Emperor's own genome to forge a new, unique gene seed. Our initial plan was to recruit loyalists even from corrupted legions, graft this loyal line into them, then subject them to extremely rigorous anti-psychic and anti-demonic training. We'd equip them with Aegis-pattern Terminator armor and bind them with wards carved from Null Maiden bones and consecrated with the blood of powerful psychers. Micardo explained the design in full. That gene seed is the purest, most powerful template we could make. It eliminates potential flaws that cause psychic instability or physical mutation and favors extreme resistance to warp corruption while enhancing psychic affinity. Every candidate has to be a potent psyker selected from millions. Once strengthened and modified by the Emperor's gene, their souls will be as tough as adamantium, and their wills a fortress against the whispers of chaos. They'll be the Imperium's last line, a blade forged to hunt space demons. Their existence must be secret until they're ready for war. Axis frowned. The secrecy surprised him. If he hadn't asked, Micardo might have revealed it only after the unit was fully formed. There was another reason his gene seed wasn't used, Micardo added. The Grey Knights would not answer to any Primarch. They were to believe the Emperor himself was their gene father. That absolute independence increased loyalty to the Imperium and prevented factional ties. If Axis's gene seed were used, any golden transformation among them would immediately reveal their lineage. Using Magnus's gene seed as the scaffold and adding the Emperor's blood makes them ideal against demons, Axis said. But I suggest selecting some of my gene seed offspring to fight alongside Magnus's. They can use the golden transformation, close quarters holy light, and still wield powerful psychic might. Magnus's line can handle long-range psychic assaults, while mine excels in melee. After Magnus's apotheosis is complete, these Grey Knights will definitely learn spells. In close combat, even if the Blood Angels get new powers, combined with holy light, my gene line should not be afraid. The Super Saiyan boost is simply too strong. Micardo's expression hardened. I'm sorry, Axis. The Emperor and I have already decided. We will not use your gene seed for the Grey Knights. Axis blinked. Why? My gene seed can be enhanced later. Among the spirit tree fruit I brought back, one was grown on a planet saturated with chaos. I purified all its taint into raw psychic energy and produced a unique fruit. If ordinary space marines eat it, they can awaken psychic powers. I already tested it en route to Holy Terra. Those fruits could make the Grey Knights stronger, practically an augmented Golden Legion. Micardo shook his head. You can give the fruit. It could be used to strengthen forces outside the Grey Knights. But we cannot allow your gene seed to flow into the Grey Knights. This unit belongs to the Emperor alone. Your golden transformation would expose them, reveal whose blood they carry. That can't happen. The Grey Knights must be beyond Primarch allegiance. They must believe the Emperor is their gene father, pure and unlinked to any one house. Axis fell silent, then conceded. He had more authority in the Imperium than even Regent Guilliman in some matters. Controlling the Grey Knights would be inappropriate. He had only wanted to boost their combat power, not control them. He had underestimated one simple truth. Golden transformation is an identity marker. So that's it, Axis said finally. I was thoughtless. The golden transformation would be a clear identifier. If someone among the Grey Knights could transform, everyone would know they bear my blood. That undermines the whole point of the Grey Knights being the Emperor's blade, transcending Primarch factions. It's good you understand, Axis, Micardo said, his tone softening with the patience of an elder. The Imperium needs the Grey Knights to be absolutely independent and pure. They are a sword of Damocles over chaos. Their loyalty must be to the Emperor alone. Anything that could create factional ties has to be removed. Axis considered for a moment, then offered a solution. You also said the Grey Knights must stay in the shadows and not be public. That's why we can create a public army to fight space demons. I can form a Golden Knights chapter, open, visible, sworn to the ecclesiarchy, made up of golden transformation soldiers, supplemented by those spirit tree fruits to awaken psychic power. They'd be the public face, the Imperial Church's holy knights who openly hunt daemons. The Grey Knights stay secret and answer to the Imperium. This new force answers to the ecclesiarchy and operates in the open. Micardo's eyes brightened. Golden Knights? That's feasible. Let them include your gene seed offspring and members from other Primarch lines as well. That's what I had in mind, Axis said. I didn't plan to commit all my gene sons to one unit, just pick elites from various legions. This would be like a daemon hunting Death Watch. The Death Watch handles Xenos. These Golden Knights would be dedicated to daemons. I'll set up an actual Death Watch too when I have time. A mobile force drawing from many legions is incredibly useful. They were still discussing the logistics when a messenger arrived to announce that Imperial Regent Guilliman requested an audience. Shortly after, Guilliman stood before Micardo. His gaze landed on Axis, and he inclined his head. Axis, I didn't expect to find you here, Guilliman said. I came to talk with Teacher Micardo. Good timing. There are things I need to tell you, Axis replied. Guilliman smiled. What a coincidence. I have something to say to both of you as well. Oh, what is it? Chapter 303. Propose disarmament. Split the Legion into war groups. Oppose. Agree. You first, Axis, Guilliman said with a smile. Axis explained his plan, to establish a national religion, why it was important, and the need for paladin forces and the Grey Knights to fight chaos demons in the Empire. Guilliman listened in silence, then spoke slowly. First, Axis, your desire to found a national religion to channel the Empire's faith toward the Father. I can agree to that. I will support you. The paladin forces and the Grey Knights, one overt, one covert, being present in the Empire to fight the demonic is also a good thing, and I will fully back it. But I object to letting that traitor Lorgar compile the scriptures. If you need someone to compose those texts, I can do it. Guilliman's tone was calm. Writing the doctrines and ideas for the national religion, how hard can it be? I could draft them in a few days. Axis smiled thinly. Heh, that's where you're wrong, Guilliman. You are learned, wise, and every bit the rational statesman, but your mind is too intellectual. What you would write would be rigorous theses and grand political doctrine. They would never be devout prayers that make people weep, shout Emperor protects, and worship the God Emperor. Faith needs fanaticism, an irrational contagion, a resonance with the deepest, most primitive fears and hopes of the heart. That is where you, this upright Primarch, are lacking. He let the words sink in, watching Guilliman carefully. Lorgar is different, Axis continued, voice sharpening. He was born for this. Fanaticism runs in his bones. You should all recall how blind and fervent his worship once was. He has an uncanny instinct for building a system of faith, how to use words, ritual, and miracle to seize people's hearts, to sculpt a leader into a divine figure. That instinct is etched into him, and even betrayal could not wholly erase it. We need that instinct. Guilliman considered this. He was formidable, but he could not claim to match Lorgar's talent for stirring devotion. If you insist, it is acceptable, but any scriptures Lorgar writes must be reviewed by me, and he cannot be released. Guilliman still had many matters to discuss with Axis. He preferred not to needlessly strain their relationship. Keeping Lorgar confined, while allowing his writings to be vetted, was a compromise Guilliman could accept. He also doubted Axis could truly persuade Lorgar otherwise. "No problem," Axis said. "If Lorgar refuses to write new works, we can always use his earlier Lectitio Divinitatis to fill the role." Convincing Guilliman seemed easier than persuading Sanguinius or Magnus. "As you wish. This is a mission given by the Father, and since you three have decided, I will support it unconditionally. Now then, about why I came to see you." "I'm listening," Axis nodded. Guilliman steepled his fingers. "After we finish uprooting the Raiden Empire and deal with their race, I intend to implement military reforms throughout the Empire." "Military reform? How do you mean?" Axis asked. He already suspected. The 13th was moving to reduce the power of the Astartes legions, splitting them up into smaller chapters. "The Great Heresy inflicted unimaginable damage," Guilliman said. "One Geneseed Primarch commanding an entire legion is a grave risk. I plan to reorganize the Astartes into countless chapters, each limited to 1,000 battle brothers. That way, even if an entire chapter betrays us, the damage will be limited." Axis's expression hardened into the look of a man who had expected this. "I object, Guilliman. Do you not trust your brothers? Which of the surviving Geneseed Primarchs is not loyal to the Emperor? Your plan is unkind." Guilliman replied patiently. "It's not about distrusting my brothers. It's for the good of the Empire. A 1,000-man chapter model gives us many more units, easier management, and far greater flexibility in deployment. A planet supporting a legion and a planet supporting chapters are different things. Splitting into chapters makes large-scale deployments easier and lets us make better use of planetary resources." He explained the benefits at length: simpler administration, tactical flexibility, and economical use of a world's manpower. The original legions will be retained in name only. They will be reorganized as chapters with smaller numbers, Guilliman finished. "Axis. I support Guilliman on this," Macario interjected. "Splitting the legions into chapters will benefit the Empire. The legions were forged for the Great Crusade. In peacetime, they are an enormous drain on resources and hard to manage. Fragmenting them makes sense." "But you can't make the Geneseed Primarchs equal to ordinary chapter masters," Axis objected. "If the legions are split, what happens to our status? Will Geneseed Primarchs be reduced to the level of chapter masters?" At that moment, a voice, sacred and majestic, touched Axis's mind with a simple command: "Agree to Guilliman." The Emperor, entrenched upon the Golden Throne, could still communicate with Axis. Rationally, Axis understood that smaller chapters would serve the future Empire well. He simply wanted the reforms adjusted to protect Primarch prerogatives. "Of course not," Guilliman said when Axis turned the question toward him. "The position of the Geneseed Primarchs will not be diminished. Axis, what is your proposal?" Axis had to be place-hated. If he opposed Guilliman and brought Magnus into the argument, even Macario's support wouldn't prevent trouble. The Primarch's strength, especially Axis's and his progeny, could sway any decision. So Axis negotiated hard. "I've thought it through," he said. "Splitting into chapters is acceptable, but all original legions must retain the title of legion. Reducing numbers is fine, but the chapter master of each former legion should still be the respective Primarch." "That makes sense," Guilliman conceded. "A Geneseed Primarch's status should exceed that of an ordinary chapter master. Primarchs are the gene fathers of their progeny. How about a compromise? Set the strength of the original legions at 2,000. That's double a standard chapter." Axis bristled. 2,000 versus 1,000 hardly shows the Primarch's status. Add more, 30,000 would be fitting. "Impossible. That's no different from a legion as it stands," Guilliman frowned. Axis's temper flared. "So you won't give me face? Very well." His golden aura flared, a terrifying power pressing down. His presence seemed to transform the air around him. "Axis, don't start another disturbance in the Empire," Guilliman warned. "Don't give me high-sounding titles unless you mean them. I will agree to split into chapters, but you must guarantee the status of every Geneseed Primarch. I am fighting for all our interests. If you won't bind those protections, I'll strike you, Axis said coldly. Gilliman's chest rose and fell. He swallowed his irritation. 30,000 is out of the question. At most 5,000. The rest must be split into chapters. Many legions, apart from his and Axis's, had already been shattered. Some could not even muster 30,000 battle brothers. The major targets of this reorganization were the largest legions, Guilliman's and Axis's, because their numbers still represented the bulk of the Astartes. Don't you dare talk of thousands like it's a joke, Axis snapped. Fine, 20,000. I'm doing this for the Empire. You must understand my difficulties, Guilliman said, exasperated. I understand your difficulties, which is why I agreed to the principle of splitting into chapters, Axis answered. But the original legions must not be reduced below 10,000. 10,000? At most 10,000. If you won't concede, I'll resign as regent. Let whoever wants the job take it, Guilliman said, the threat a blunt one. That's more like it, Axis replied, relaxing slightly. So it's settled. The original legions will be fixed at 10,000 apiece, and any excess bloodlines will be organized into 1,000-man chapters. They had reached an uneasy compromise, one that preserved the practical goals of Guilliman's reform while safeguarding the honors and power of the Primarchs. A strength of 10,000. I think all the brothers can accept that, Guilliman said at last, speaking slowly. That number preserved the other legion's forces while still showing proper respect for the Primarch's dignity. Of course, if the others can accept it, then let's talk logistics, Guilliman, Axis replied. A chapter of 1,000 is for combat troops. You can't count logistics staff and some new recruits in that 1,000, can you? Guilliman bristled. The new recruit company is 200. They're not part of the official establishment. The chapter remains 1,000, but all of them are combatants, Axis went on. If the Emperor hadn't already signaled his tacit approval, Axis might have asked for even more. Guilliman exhaled. Understood. Any other demands? Say them now. Axis folded his hands. Also, my legion, the Golden Legion, needs to remain at 100,000. We happen to have 30,000 extra men right now, and with the new recruits coming from Nuceria, that will be enough to split into 50 chapters. He was not asking for 10,000 for his own legion. He wanted 100,000. Nuceria, hurriedly producing recruits because of the heresy, would likely turn out 20 to 30,000 by the time Axis returned. Those recruits, plus the 30,000 excess, would give him the force to form 50 chapters. Axis, you scoundrel! Why do you get special treatment? Guilliman snapped. Keeping a legion at 100,000 was effectively keeping a full Astartes legion intact. Because I bear a special mission, Guilliman. If you want to know, I can tell you, Axis said coldly. He needed that manpower to meet eventual threats. The Beast Wars, Dark Eldar, Space Necrons, Orcs. Everywhere in the galaxy needed strength. I bear the mission of bringing the Emperor off the Golden Throne, Axis said plainly. Enough. I get it, Axis, but this is my limit, Guilliman thundered. Fine. Your Golden Legion will be allowed 100,000. But my Ultramarines must also be maintained at 100,000. If Axis could keep 100,000, Guilliman would not be content unless his Ultramarines matched it. He was regent of the Imperium. Balance mattered. The forces already under his command ran to 400,000. Splitting them into chapters still left 300 chapters worth, and those could form subchapters later. I don't care. If you want parity, then have it. If any of the other brothers object, they can keep the same numbers too, Axis said with an odd smile. You, Guilliman fumed. Micardo, Chancellor of Terra, finally cut in, exasperated. All other legions, except the Ultramarines and the Golden Legion, including Kratos' Sons of Axis Legion, will be limited to 10,000. Two of the Imperium's highest commanders, one a prince of the Imperium, the other its regent, arguing like street brawlers had tried Micardo's patience. Guilliman strode away, shoulders taut. He had a war to prepare for. Axis, Micardo said more quietly once the shouting had died. You must understand that a legion that large is unwieldy. Chapters are more flexible and easier to administer. As an immortal, Micardo represented the interests of the mortal institutions, the High Lords of Terra, and the planetary administrators who were all human. Many Astartes already regarded themselves as superior to mortals, Their lifespans were decades longer. A normal Astartes could live 700 or 800 years. Mortals rarely exceeded 80. The administrative class needed stability. That's why I agreed to his plan, Axis replied, and because it's the Emperor's will. Micardo blinked. He thought himself privileged in his audiences with the Emperor, exchanges through the Golden Throne that left the speaker's soul badly taxed. Axis, you mean you can still communicate with the Emperor? Yes, Teacher Micardo. I can, Axis answered without hesitation. His soul had been strengthened by his chi. It had become almost as substantial as his body. He could withstand the Emperor's voice where others would have their spirit shredded. Primarchs could bear it as well. Then Magnus and Kasha should be able to speak with the Emperor too, and perhaps even your son, Kratos, Micardo mused. Their psychic power was great. Probably, Axis said, but there's no point arguing about it. It's Father's will. While we are campaigning, Teacher Micardo, please accelerate the integration of the Pharos system and the Astronomicon. If you can, reduce or stop the daily sacrifices of Psykers. Micardo's face was grave. Sacrificing Psykers increased the Emperor's psychic reach, but many did not die willingly. Their hatred and torment stained what the Emperor had to bear. I know. I've started work. By the time you return from the Raiden campaign, I hope to have significant progress. I can't promise no sacrifices, but with the Pharos system integrated, perhaps we can reduce the number to around 500 daily, at most. Axis nodded. I understand. Then I'll go see Lorgar. He dismissed Micardo with a wave and went alone to the cell. Custodian guards were cleared away at Axis's command. His method of persuasion with Lorgar was private. Once he reached the underground prison on Holy Terra, he opened the cell and deactivated the stasis field within. It's you, Axis. Are you here to mock me? To humiliate me? Lorgar spat, pounding against his bonds. No. Axis sat cross-legged in front of him. I came to tell you the result of this battle. We have a complete victory. Horus is dead at the Emperor's hand. The armies of chaos are defeated. I knew Horus would fail. Lorgar's voice was bitter. But if you came to see me bowed and broken, you're mistaken. Axis smiled. I appreciate a tough nut. If you begged, I'd look down on you. Then spit it out. If you have nothing, leave me to my sleep. Or have you come to kill me? Is that the end you think I deserve? Lorgar snarled. No pleasantries. Axis leaned forward. Lorgar, I want you to write a doctrine, a dogma that praises the Emperor. I intend to found a state religion with the Emperor at its center. Lorgar froze. His face twisted through disbelief, incredulity, surprise, and then a hard vein of anger. He barked a manic laugh. You're joking, Axis. That's a good one. I don't joke, Axis said. We march for the Raiden tomorrow. The Emperor needs a national religion to secure his rule. He needs you. Lorgar's reaction turned to furious pleading. The Emperor can't see me. And the Chaos Gods, are they not his enemies? You lied to me. You've all lied. Axis produced a branded iron tablet and set it on the floor. It was smudged with lichen-like ash that pulsed with unnatural warp energy. Khorne's ashes, he said lightly. And yes, Khorne and I have reached a small agreement. The Emperor knows. That admission shivered something in Lorgar. You liars, why did you deceive me? His eyes burned with betrayed fury. Lorgar, you made the mistake of being unable to adapt. The Chaos Gods are the Emperor's enemies, yes, but they are not friends to one another. The Emperor destroyed the perfect city, but did every single worshipper die? He leveled a city, not the people. Cities can be rebuilt. If the people remain, faith can be rebuilt. You're wrong. I will not consent, Lorgar roared. That's a shame. Axis's voice turned flat. I was prepared to petition the Emperor to commute your sentence. If you offer to atone, your death sentence could be reduced to imprisonment. Do you think I fear death? Lorgar snapped. Axis let that defiance hang for a beat, then asked softly, a smile curling at the edge of his tone, Then you do not want the office of Pontifex Maximus in the new order? The question hit like a blade. Lorgar's eyes widened. The insult, and the implication of a future role at the heart of state religion, pierced deeper than any threat of death. Axis's words were like poisoned ice picks, driving into Lorgar's already shattered heart. The single word Pope fell like a thunderclap, shattering what little remained of his soul. That title, the pinnacle of faith, the Emperor's highest earthly representative, was the thing he had once dreamed of. the thing he had sacrificed everything for and had only briefly touched before falling into the abyss. He had wanted to build a faith for his father, to bind mankind's loyalty to him. That had been his life's purpose. Pope. The Pope? Lorgar's voice came out hoarse as sandpaper, trembling with disbelief. In his hollow eyes, from the cold ashes of ruin, a spike of ambition and desire flared up only to be immediately crushed by pain and bitter irony. You're toying with me, aren't you? You'd make me, this traitor, this fool scorned by my father and used by chaos, the Pope of the national religion? Ha ha! Axis, you're getting crueler by the minute. If you have the stomach for it, just kill me. His manic laughter echoed in the cold cell, a bitter, ragged sound. Dirt-streaked tears ran down his contorted face. Perfect city, my perfect city. I dedicated that city to my father, and his fleet turned it to ashes. My faith, my piety, all I earned was cold ruin. And now you tell me he needs what he himself destroyed? That the city was destroyed not because my father hated my faith, but because I delayed the great crusade? And yet you want me, whose faith he blasted to rubble, to lead that faith? Axis, that's more cruel than killing me outright. You break me. Axis watched the outburst with icy detachment, as if savoring a tragedy. When Lorgar's laughter turned to sobs, he spoke at last, his voice cold as winter, but threaded with a strange, persuasive whisper. Cruel? No, Lorgar. This is your only path to salvation. Destiny's last door. An opportunity to let your talents be put to use. He leaned forward, eyes sharp enough to pierce the dark corners of Lorgar's soul. Think on it, Lorgar Aurelian. All your life you sought to make your father a god, to build a glorious religious nation around him. You failed, utterly, disastrously, but your ideal, your religion, is exactly what the Imperium needs. The Imperium of man. Your father needs it to hold his rule together. Lorgar's gaze flickered. He looked like a man wrestling with himself. Axis's voice took on a near-demonic allure. Do you think the Chaos Gods have not lied to you? No, the Emperor never lied to you. He destroyed your perfect city, yes, but the Chaos Gods were using you from the start. Why do you think you walked into my territory? They told you I wasn't there, but I was waiting. Khorne made a small bargain with me. Who do you think fed me your movements? You blame the Emperor, but have you ever considered that Chaos never treated you as anything more than a pawn? In the Emperor's eyes, you are still useful. In the Chaos God's eyes, you are expendable. They sent you to me to be killed. You couldn't even beat my gene seed offspring, let alone me. Do you think the Lords of Chaos didn't know this? Do you think Horus didn't know? Out of the dark, two voices seemed to answer in opposite tones, Khorne's furious bark and Horus's protesting retort, charges and countercharges that echoed in the cell like thunder. You've been deceived, Axis went on. The facts are before you. You refuse to see them. The spark you lit was snuffed by your father, but that spark must be relit, and it must be relit by you. Take up the pen. Use your zeal, your eloquence, your deep understanding of the Emperor's nature, and compose the true Book of Lorgar. Build a system of faith that can ignite billions of souls. Let your talents serve the god you once believed in, not the demons who toyed with you. He let the idea hang in the stale air, letting its bitter irony and temptation ferment. Can you let me go? Let me out to be Pope? Lorgar asked, voice small and pleading. Axis smiled, a thin, satisfied curve. He'd expected this. Pope is only a title, Axis said. If you want it, I can grant it, but not yet. Axis almost felt the presence of Tzeentch at his shoulder, as if that infamous patron god were nodding in approval. Lorgar's disappointment was immediate and visible. A title, that was all he had wanted. Of course not now, Axis shrugged. You must atone for your crimes. The other Primarchs must see that you have truly changed. It won't be granted until then. Lorgar, Axis continued, his voice sharpening into something like a command. Do you choose to rot in eternal stasis, a husk of failure swallowed by oblivion? Or do you pick up the pen and with your stained but unmatched gifts write of the Emperor's sanctity, the only thing left you can touch? Become the founder of the national religion, even if your name is erased, even if your deeds are eclipsed by Sanguinius's glory. Your words, your system, will endure in the Imperium forever. That is your last chance. That is your salvation. Silence fell like a shroud. Lorgar's gaunt body trembled, his eyes rolled with a maelstrom of ecstasy and despair, humiliation and longing. pain and a perverse, aching devotion. Pope, founder, salvation, he murmured, each word a searing brand on his soul. Axis's offer was absurd and monstrous, but unbearably tempting. It married his life's ambition, his greatest failure, his twisted love for the Emperor, and offered them all back to him in a glittering, poisoned cage called final purpose. To refuse was to be erased, his ideals, his talents, his suffering, all cast into meaninglessness. To accept was to hang his fate on a slender, uncertain thread. Axis provided no third path. Time slowed. Sweat and tears tracked down Lar's face and fell to the cold stone. Then, suddenly, an overwhelming sacred presence descended into the cell. A consciousness vast and terrible as lightning struck Lorgar. His whole body convulsed. It took him a long time to steady himself. Axis knew, with a clinical calm, that Huang Laohan had arrived. After all, their territory lay within Huang Laohan's domain. From the depths of Lorgar's throat came a raw, tearing cry, filled with endless pain and a clinging, fragile refusal to die. "Father, you promised me. Axis, the pen. Give me the pen." Lorgar's head snapped up, his bloodshot eyes fixed on Axis not with emptiness but with a feverish, desperate flame. "I will write," he croaked. "I will write the most glorious scripture for the national religion, the Emperor's word that will make the galaxy tremble. Let my father's light shine across the imperium of man." His voice was hoarse, but it carried a grim exhilaration. Huang Laohan's visitation, whatever promise it had bestowed, had reignited his purpose. "But remember your promise, Axis," Lorgar added, clinging to the one thing that kept him alive. "The Pope of the national religion, even if only a title, must be mine. When I have counted my sins, it will be mine." Axis regarded the broken, fanatical traitor with the same blank expression he had shown all along. From within his cloak he produced a quill wrought of adamantium and set it, cold and gleaming, on the floor before Lorgar. "Very well, Lorgar. Begin your salvation," he said. "Everything you write will be strictly supervised. Anything that must not appear will be erased. This is your last chance. I hope your words can be used without a single alteration." Without another word, Axis turned and left. The heavy adamantium door sealed with a muted finality, cutting Lorgar off from the world once more. Inside the cell, only the cold quill remained. The former Primarch of the Word-Bearers lay prostrate on the floor, and with trembling, emaciated fingers, reached out and clutched it as if it were a lifeline. In his eyes there was now only paper and pen, and the fevered, burning illusion of the God Emperor's divinity. Under Axis's surveillance, imprisoned and watched, Lorgar began to write the scripture that would become the holy text of the future national religion, words that countless believers across the Imperium would one day be required to learn. Chapter 306, The King of Knowledge, the Lord of Arcane, the Mage or the Sorcerer. Axis nodded in satisfaction as he watched Lorgar feverishly write, a fanatic light in his eyes, then left the cell. Writing the national religion's entire scripture would not be finished overnight. Axis would return to check on the work after the right end were dealt with. He trusted Lorgar to produce a suitable text. Surveillance no longer required his personal attention. Huang Laohan would watch over the matter. With Huang Laohan's constant vigilance, no chaotic evil force would get the chance to interfere. For now, the creation of the national religion, Lorgar's compilation of its scripture, and the plans for the Great Demobilization had to be kept secret from the other Geneseed Primarchs. At present, the Geneseed Primarchs were occupied celebrating victory and congratulating Sanguinius. Sanguinius had resolved his crisis and transformed back into a noble archangel. His body radiated a golden holy light that stunned the others. He had even seeded the holy light within each Primarch, sharing the power freely and insisting it was unlike warp power. He had created it himself, and it was safe. He offered to have members of their legions train at the Blood Angels to learn it. The offer was irresistible. Holy light could attack, defend, and heal. It carried none of the inherent dangers of psychic power. The Primarchs were eager to learn. In the following days, they refined the technique, layering holy light around their bodies like invisible armor, infusing it into melee and ranged weapons, and using it to bless allies, imparting strength, speed, courage, agility, wisdom. Under the sharp minds of the Primarchs, the paladin arts advanced rapidly. Even Russ, Axis's father, became enthusiastic. He sought Axis out, desperate to learn, and Axis did not hold back, sharing everything he had grasped about holy light, paladin methods, and imagined applications. Time passed quickly. Soon it was time for the army to depart. This campaign would be led by Axis and Guilliman, the Empire's two titled princes. Assisting them were Leman Russ, Lionel Johnson, Magnus, and Sanguinius. Rogel Dorn was left to guard Holy Terra. Vulcan, Chagatai Khan, Korax, and Ferris Manus took charge of hunting down Chaos Rebels and driving them into the Eye of Terror, where a fortress would be established to seal those traitors away. On Holy Terra, Guilliman presided over a concise oath-taking ceremony and gave a speech to rally the Imperial legions. When Axis stood, he spoke only a few plain words before stepping down. After mobilization, the Space Marines boarded their vessels. A monstrous Imperial fleet set its course for the Empire's western front and the Raiden. They might be confronting the Raiden a century later than in another timeline, but their doom at the hands of the Empire was inevitable. This time, Axis did not beg the Laughing God for webway access. He simply used warp travel. The Emperor sat upon the Golden Throne. Micardo had been integrating the Pharos system into the Astronomicon, and the warp storms had calmed enough for relatively safe transit. Sanguinius's immense psychic presence also protected the human fleet through the warp. On the bridge of the Morning Star, Magnus and Axis stood together, with Leman Russ and Lionel Johnson at their flanks. After a few days' rest, Magnus had readied himself. It was time to consume the remaining spirit tree fruit. Axis had invited the others aboard to observe. "Axis, are you sure this is safe?" Russ asked quietly. "Don't worry," Axis replied. Sanguinius's holy light was different from Magnus's situation. Sanguinius had already been an archangel. His body always carried that divine radiance. Magnus is different. His psychic power is already immense. But the Primarch's souls were forged by the Emperor using fragments of human divinities. You are already a new life form. Accepting the warp essence won't undo your bodies. Russ and Lion exchanged worried looks. Each hoped Magnus would not lose control and dissolve into some subspace godhood. Axis, however, was curious to see what awakening would do to them. Russ, after all, had imbued the Space Wolves with lupine traits. Lion L. Johnson's nature had always been oddly angelic. What shape their divine changes would take intrigued him. Magnus did not hesitate. He sat and began to consume the spirit tree fruit. After years on the Golden Throne, his psychic and physical mastery had sharpened. He took all 8 fruits at once. Psychic power rose like a gathering storm and then broke. The eruption dwarfed Sanguinius's ascension. If Sanguinius had been a holy storm, Magnus's outburst was a singularity, affecting both the material and the warp. The Morning Star itself seemed to become translucent. Hull plating groaned and warped under the pressure, instrumentation sparked, and bridge lights stuttered before failing. Everywhere went dark except the space around Magnus, which flared with a brightness that could blind mortals. It was not Sanguinius's warm gold. It was an ultimate psychic thunderstorm, billions of colors braided and shredded in an instant: crimson, deep purple, silver blue, emerald, platinum, starlight. Magnus's vast, star-ocean mind forcibly integrated, analyzed, and reconstructed the energies of the spirit tree fruit. Runes and motes of power danced and converged into him. A thunderous, multi-voiced proclamation resonated deep within every soul present. "I am, the King of all knowledge, the Lord of truth." Then the storm collapsed inward. The surging psychic energy, the flickering runes and distorted lights, like rivers returning to the sea, poured into Magnus's reshaped form. The light receded, and a new Magnus hovered in midair. He had grown taller, nearly 4 meters, and his body now moved with an inhuman, faultless coordination. Within him, silver-blue streams of energy traced across his flesh like living circuitry. A third eye had opened on his forehead, its surface a shifting kaleidoscope of stars, runes, and shards of lore. He did not sprout wings. Instead, a hazy, rotating star chart spun behind him, a domain of ever-changing sigils and tiny runes of pure psychic light like a miniature firmament. A halo-like presence wreathed him. Around him, the warp itself grew strangely ordered, its rampant tides calmed, parting into gentle currents that obeyed his will. Magnus had become more than a powerful psyker. He was a helmsman of the warp, a sovereign of knowledge and truth. The light faded, and a new Magnus, the Lord of Change, the Lord of Truth, hovered above the bridge of the Morning Star. Behind him, the swirling stellar chart domain radiated a deep, knowing light, and the third eye in his forehead stood like a window of truth, discerning all things and reflecting the mysteries of the cosmos. Silver-blue veins of energy ran beneath his violet skin like living cosmic laws. Axis, Leman Russ, and Lionel Johnson all felt the unfamiliar majesty radiating from him, neither tyrannical nor saintly, yet exerting an inexorable dominion over all things. The warp around him fell calm, as if utterly tamed. "Magnus, how do you feel now?" Axis asked first, eyes bright with anticipation. Magnus's transformation was no less momentous than sanguineous. No wonder the Chaos Gods coveted the Primarchs. Each of them contained top-tier potential, Axis thought. Magnus descended slowly, his motion almost inhuman in its fluidity. He did not answer immediately. He raised his right hand, palm up, and without chanting or conjuring a psychic storm, a small patch of space above his palm began to warp. It was not the violent rent of a warp rift, but a subtler, more fundamental change in energy. A wisp of pure warp energy formed in his hand. Axis recognized it at once. This was warp energy. But the corrupting, maddening taint, the twisted colors, were gone. It reminded him of the warp energy he had once purified with his chi energy, yet it was different. This light was unlike Sanguinius's warm, holy golden holy light, and unlike the volatile, emotion-laden malign power of raw warp sorcery. It was a pure, crystalline blue, the color of the deepest cosmic background and the clearest core of ice, utterly stable, inward, radiating a cold, rational brilliance as if it embodied the laws of the cosmos, analyzed and reconstructed. Axis leaned forward, studying it. "What is this power?" Lionel Johnson's gaze was fixed on the blue wisp. He felt the terrifying potency within it, but it was bound by absolute order and reason, without the warp's frenzy or pollution. Lemers watched intently from the side. "This energy is different from holy light," he observed in a low voice. "Holy light does not come from the warp, but this, it seems to be the essence of warp power, yet entirely transformed." "Magnus, explain this new energy," Axis said. "It's similar in some ways to Sanguinius's holy light, but clearly very different." "It is arcane energy," Magnus replied, with a trace of quiet pride. "That is the name I have given it. It differs from Sanguinius's holy light. Holy light is rooted in faith and emotion. Arcane is warp energy, purified and made safe by my divine power. I will demonstrate." He smiled slightly. A torrent of arcane energy, thicker and more luminous than the wisp, streamed from his hand toward a dense asteroid belt beyond the bridge. First, a bolt of psychic lightning split the darkness. Then a blizzard materialized out of nowhere. Then a gush of searing flame. Magnus used arcane energy to simulate and control phenomena that could exist only on a planetary surface, right there in the vacuum of space. The arcane coalesced into a gigantic hand that blotted out the stars, plucked an immense asteroid, and tossed it aside like a pebble. Finally, the arcane became a flawless shockwave that pulverized another massive rock. "I have purified and refined the chaotic energy of the warp," Magnus said, withdrawing his power. "I have forged it into a safe, controllable force. This is the power of purity, the flame of knowledge. Those who possess wisdom, iron will, and the capacity to discern the warp's essence can learn to wield it. It does not answer prayers or fanaticism. It answers understanding and mastery. It will be my gift to the Empire, a weapon against chaos and Xenos demons." Magnus turned his gaze on Axis. "Axis, Sanguinius brought the holy light of healing and faith. I bring arcane, discernment, and control. Its essence remains psychic, but it has been reborn and made far safer. The power of chaos can be purified, refined, and transmuted into arcane." Arcane energy, Axis felt a thrill. This was a new path. Magnus had combined his divine power with the purifying properties of Axis's chi energy to cleanse the warp. Axis's chi energy had inspired him, and Sanguinius' holy light provided a precedent, but the decisive element was Magnus himself, a master of psychic art whose vast knowledge formed the foundation of this work. Axis nodded, excited. Magnus had not only become a lord of change of warp lore, but an arcane god who had pioneered a new source of power. His method of purifying warp chaos into stable arcane energy was a stroke of genius. "Ha-ha! More than stable. Magnus, you've opened a brand new path." Axis gave him a thumbs up. "A path that transcends the warp, truly belonging to humanity. Arcane, the name fits perfectly." "So," Lionel Johnson pressed, seizing the key question, You mean all psychers could one day learn this safe arcane energy? In theory, yes, Magnus said. Then his tone grew more cautious. But not yet. I have just created this energy. To allow widespread safe use, we must build a vast network in the warp, centered on me. This network would act as a core purifier, filtering and distributing arcane energy. Axis realized what that implied, a kind of magic net. But to build such a network under the dominion of the Chaos Gods would be unimaginably difficult and perilous. It struck at the heart of the four gods' interests. If psychers commonly used safe arcane energy, demons would find it far harder to rend reality with emotional power and open flesh ports. The number of chaos warlocks would plummet, who, given a safe choice, would still choose the dangerous road. Tzeentch, the Lord of Change and God of Magic, would regard Magnus's project as a direct affront to his domain. Even Khorne, Axis's ally, would not tolerate anything that fundamentally weakened Chaos's power. At a time when the Emperor had just finished his titanic struggle with the Four, and Axis still depended on Khorne's power to nourish a nascent godfruit, this was no moment to provoke more enemies. Magnus, Axis asked cautiously, how long would it take to establish this magic net? What must be done? If built as I envision, Magnus admitted, it will be a colossal undertaking, perhaps comparable to Father's Webway project. I would need your support, Axis, and Father's to succeed. Once established, arcane energy would become the central foundation for all psychic power, and no one would revert to that dangerous, primitive warp. Axis thought of the risks and the scale. For now, he said, can you teach this power to your gene seed children? To the intellect libraries of each legion? Even to ordinary mortal psychers? Of course, Magnus replied. Just as Sanguinius can sow seeds of holy light, I can create arcane seeds. With such a seed, my gene seed progeny and the intellect libraries can purify warp energy and cast arcane magic. But the seed is not as powerful or efficient as a full network. It is essentially a fixed filter, unable to grow and expand. Frankly, arcane was still purified warp energy, and in some respects, slightly inferior to holy light. Then let's use that for now, Axis decided. We don't have the time or resources to build a webway-scale network, and starting such a plan now could provoke the Four. I agree, Magnus said. This energy should first be given to loyal Imperial Space Marines. What about a spell system? Axis asked. I plan to develop several schools based on existing psychic frameworks. Elemental systems, wind, lightning, earth, fire, ice, energy control, and unique disciplines. These all have mature psychic models to convert, so they will be relatively quick to teach. Magnus already had plans. Axis had expected the small, scholarly Magnus might walk a warlock's road. Instead, he had become a true mage, mastering knowledge itself, fitting for Prospero, the planet of mages. Axis, Magnus added with deeper pride. Beyond discovering arcane energy and conceiving the magic net, I awakened other powers when I reached subspace god status. Oh? Tell me, Axis said. First, Magnus continued, like Sanguinius, my psychic power can now be wielded freely in the physical universe. I can calm warp storms within an area, and when I travel the warp, I can navigate without relying on Father's Astronomicon. Second, I bear a unique blessing. All my gene seed offspring, whether they had psychic talent before or not, will now become potent psychers. By virtue of their connection to my gene seed and to me, they can purify warp energy and cast arcane without needing a magic net or an arcane seed. At this moment, Magnus's power had risen to an unprecedented peak, far greater than before. He believed that, seated upon the golden throne, he could maintain it perfectly. With his vast psychic might, he could bend time across an entire star system, let centuries pass outside while only a month elapsed within, a supreme demonstration of psychic power. If Leon and I undergo this process, can we become gods too? Leman Russ broke the silence, urgency in his voice. Seeing his two brothers transformed, his desire was blunt and fierce. I don't want flashy powers. I only need to be stronger, strong enough to protect all I cherish. This war had laid bare his impotence, manipulated by chaos, exiled to the Empire's frontier by Horus, absent from the great heresy's central theaters. Unlike Magnus and Sanguinius, he had not yet gained a new domain. If he could simply magnify his strength tenfold like his brothers, that would be enough. I cannot guarantee it, Axis answered plainly. The godhood Magnus and Sanguinius achieved came from using my spirit tree fruit and chi energy to create powerful bodies in the real universe capable of bearing the soul of a lesser god. The emergence of holy light and arcane sprang from their own unique natures and paths. Each gene seed Primarch is different. The results will vary. Still, the Empire could now develop at least two extraordinary spiritual paths: paladins, the Adepta Sororitas, and priests based on holy light, and arcane spellcasters based on arcane energy. Axis thought the Empire would likely accept holy light more readily. Arcane, being warp-derived in essence, would face deep-rooted fear and resistance among mortals. "I want to try, Axis!" Leman Russ strode forward, voice resolute. "I must become stronger." "No problem," Axis replied. He turned to Lionel Johnson. "And you?" "Me?" the Lion said calmly, waving a hand. "We'll discuss it after this war." Axis nodded and produced 8 spirit tree fruits, each glowing with life. The quiet voyage through the warp was an ideal moment to perform the godhood ritual for Leman Russ, just as Magnus had done. Without hesitation, Leman Russ swallowed a spirit tree fruit. A tremendous surge of life energy erupted within him. Chapter 308, Wild Wolf God, Mad Wolf Transformation. 8 spirit tree fruits melted the moment they entered his mouth, exploding into an indescribable torrent of life that rushed through Leman Russ's limbs and bones. The energy was more violent, more primitive, than anything Magnus or Sanguinius had taken into themselves. Ugh! Leman Russ let out a suppressed growl. Muscles bulged and twisted as if alive, bones protesting with a grinding chorus of cracks. His flesh went scorching hot, steam rising in thin white vapors. Blood vessels flared beneath the skin like angry, glowing vines, molten red running under steel-gray fur, an image in stark contrast to the silver-blue veins of cosmic law that had bloomed on Magnus. "Stand back!" Axis roared, throwing his hands wide. A barrier of golden chi sprang up, solid and hard, shielding Lionel Johnson and himself. Magnus turned solemn, concentrating. Potent arcane energy swirled at his fingertips to stabilize the area of the ship. The air on the bridge seemed to thicken. All present held their breath against the crushing pressure. Russ's body swelled with a terrifying, uncontrollable growth. His already massive frame became colossal, the power armor groaning under the strain until with a shattering crack the chest and shoulder plates burst away. Then a roar, no longer human but bestial and vast, tore from his throat, cleaving the silence of the bridge. It carried the cold wind of Fenris's ice plains, the loneliness of wolves howling at the moon, and the savage exultation of one who had broken his shackles. Under horrified eyes, Leman Russ completed his metamorphosis. He was no longer a Primarch in power armor. He rose like a towering wolf giant, nearly 10 meters tall, his body sheathed in dense, steel-needle fur the color of frosted iron. Rippling muscle lay under the long pelt, a strength that could rend planets. His head was fully lupine, fangs like temple pillars, vertical pupils burning with an unquenchable lust for battle. A thick tail swept the deck like a battering ram, gouging the floor as it passed. The wildness of Fenris, the raw force of the predator, the indomitable will of a warrior, and the immense life force of a Primarch had fused into one transcendent form. Wolf God Leman Russ stood, and simply by being, sent a storm of pressure outward. It was unlike Magnus's measured sovereignty or Sanguinius's radiant sanctity. This was raw, unchained aggression, a primeval vitality that felt like an enormous celestial beast had awakened. Axis couldn't help but feel a thrill. The feral aura was uncannily like his Super Saiyan 4. Here, perhaps, was fate made manifest. Another universe-shaking howl rent the air. The sound pierced the Morning Star's hull, even clawing at the warp's veil. Invisible shockwaves rolled outward, destructive and wild. Russ's eyes were blood-red, madness burning in them. Slobber dripped from his maw. Around the bridge, some of the space wolves answered in instinctive howls. Their bodies sprouted black fur that burst through armor plates as they became werewolves before everyone's eyes. Axis slammed up his chi barrier, alarm ripping through him. If Russ's aura reached any more of the space wolves, they would all follow. "Steady the ship," he barked, pushing the barrier to its limit. The Morning Star quivered as if locked in a warp storm, though they hung in the real universe. The observation viewport warped, a distant asteroid belt shattered into drifting dust under the shock of that howl. Magnus's third eye flared, arcane runes braided around him, complex and desperate, stabilizing the vessel's local space and dampening the sound wave's destructive edge. Axis turned to Russ with the fierce plea of a son. "Russ, control yourself. Do you want to hurl us all into the warp?" he shouted, voice fraying at the edges. "Dad, be yourself. This isn't you." He let his own wild nature loose, red fur sweeping over him, deep red eyeshadow flaring as he activated Super Saiyan 4. The savage force of Axis's transformation resonated with the wolf god's fury. Gradually, the roaring pressure eased. The wolf's blood eyes softened to gold. He lowered his head, the burning gaze sweeping the bridge. The violent aura ebbed by more than half, replaced by something complicated: gratitude, protectiveness, and absolute recognition. "Axis," came a deep, gravelly voice like rock scraping rock. He raised one massive, furred paw, claws capable of rending adamantium extended in a tentative gesture, wanting to touch, yet afraid his strength might harm. Axis let the barrier fall, a real smile trembling across his face despite the lingering fear. "How do you feel, Dad?" Russ rumbled once, words finding a new cadence in the massive throat. "Your entrance was awe-inspiring. I feel power, endless power. Never before has something sealed in me, erupted, the blood of Fenris boiling in my veins." Every motion of his new frame let loose a keen that sliced the air. He looked at his steel-furred claws, at his reflection in the bridge dome, and a flicker of novelty and satisfaction burned in his golden eyes. Magnus studied the energy around him, the eye of truth scratching at the pattern. "You haven't developed a formal system like Holy Light or Arcane," he observed. "But your existence, your wildness and force, embodies your divinity. Your life principle has risen to a terrifying degree. Raw strength, speed, regeneration, and a roar that can shake reality. That in itself is an ultimate divine power." Russ bared his white fangs in a grin that was all feral joy. "I don't need flashy spells," he growled. "Claws, teeth, and a war howl, that's enough. Enough to tear traitors and their demon masters to pieces." He clenched a paw until the air around it popped in a dull sonic boom. Memories of Horus's betrayal, of Terra left undefended, surged like lava. This new power, potent enough to rip stars, stoked his hunger for vengeance. "What of the werewolf curse on your sons?" Lionel Johnson asked, voice low and steady. Russ's pupils narrowed. He felt the bloodline threading from him to his warriors. Then his deep voice rang out like a bell across the bridge. "All my wild cubs, who flow with the blood of Fenris and are true to me, their wildness will be fully awakened. Their strength, speed, and regrowth will leap beyond measure. They will be more like the ancient predators of Fenris, like me now. Yet they will be able to return to human form at will." The old curse ends. "Axis, my son, my legion will gain the power to transform." The Space Wolves would become the third legion, after the Golden Legion and the Blood Angels, to master deliberate transformation. Those who had become full werewolves calmed and returned to human form. Even some of the cursed imprisoned on Fenris began to recover. "My wild wolves are no longer cursed," Russ declared. "They will be my fiercest claws, my vanguard without fear. Their shape will be steady. Their fury will be guided. They will be the purest storm of destruction on the battlefield." Simple, direct, violent. Leman Russ's life force had been sublimated and unleashed. He had become the purest wolf god. The Space Wolves would rise as a destructive torrent, led by their god and composed of wolfmen made steady and terrible. Axis looked from the ancient aura of the wolf god to Magnus's control of arcane truth at his side. Holy light, arcane, wild divine power. The structure of the Imperium's strength was shifting. The awakening of Leman Russ, the wolf god, had added the wildest, sharpest axe to their arsenal. The wild wolf, Russ lifted his massive head and howled into the empty void. "Awoo!" Even on all fours, he stood a terrifying 5 meters tall. With his tail, his total length stretched well beyond 13 meters. Axis thought of druids, those mystics who could become owls, stags, bears, cheetahs, falcons, or even Tyrannosaurus, because in theory a druid who bonded with an animal could take on any form. Compared to that variety, Leman Russ's wild wolf god transformation was a little monotonous. But then, one did not expect the Wolf King to become a Beast King. If Russ were put into the worlds of Azeroth, he would at least be a demigod of the wild. A flash of white light later, and Leman Russ folded back into his human shape, appearing among them again. "Congratulations, Father. You're effectively a lesser warp god now. Your physical body in the real universe finally matches your soul," Axis said. Russ laughed and nodded. Ha ha! Thanks to you, Axis. I trusted you and Magnus, and this power is truly immense. He had made the right gamble. He felt stronger than ever, psychic power flowing as naturally as an arm, something he could wield at will. You chose to trust us, and we won't let you down, Axis replied. The only Primarch who hadn't upgraded yet was Lionel Johnson. If the Lion wanted to ascend, he would need a cultivator gene seed offspring infused with chi, then years of strengthening. Axis could also temper them, but it would take a century to make a qualitative change. On the bridge, Lion stood with arms folded, watching the giant wolf radiate an almost primeval divinity. His rock-like face betrayed little emotion, only a solemnity and, deep in his sharp eyes, an indecipherable anticipation. Next, it might be his turn. But Lion's expression carried concern. The Gene Seed Primarch's appearances were still human-shaped, yes, but who counted a 3.5 or 4 meter giant as one of their own? These colossal kin enjoyed near immortality and powers mortals could not fathom. Sanguinius, Magnus, Leman Russ. Each had passed beyond human comprehension. Could they still be called human? Russ came over and put a heavy hand on the Lion's shoulder. What's wrong? This power is incredible and stable. I feel what it means to be godlike. I can sense every one of my gene seed offspring, a faint bond even with Fenris. You should join, embrace this strength. Russ, are you truly still human? You and Magnus and Sanguinius, are you really human? Lionel Johnson asked, his voice tight. At once Magnus and Russ both stiffened. The Lion was asking the question they scarcely wanted aloud. Were they no longer human but gods of the warp? Magnus had a third eye. Leman Russ could become a colossal wolf. Sanguinius shifted between angelic aspects and wielded holy light. Magnus could look like the god of knowledge, Russ the god of wild wolves, Sanguinius the god of holy light. We are gods of the warp. By nature we are gods, Magnus said. We wore human shells before. Now those shells have been upgraded to fit our true natures. Lion's words had struck a nerve. My brother, father told us the truth, Russ added. Axis had informed them. The Gene Seed Primarchs were forged from fragments of human lesser gods in the warp. All of them now knew some of that truth. They were, in essence, lesser warp gods. Yes, you are gods now, immortal, tremendously strong. But that's not what I want, Lion said. He looked at Axis and the others without pleading, only resolve. I know you offer great power, but I wish you would respect my choice. I would rather live and one day die as a human than give up that. If I age and die naturally, so be it. He did not want the divine form. He feared completing the ascension would erase the Lion and replace him with a different kind of angel. When he finished speaking, he turned and left, taking his gene seed offspring and boarding a small craft that carried them back to the ship. I can't understand why he refuses to accept his true nature, Magnus said after the Lion departed. Axis smiled. Everyone has their own aspiration, Magnus. The Empire doesn't need unlimited combat power right now. We are more than enough. No force in the galaxy can threaten humanity. Let him be, Leman Russ grunted. Having truly become a god, his perspective had subtly shifted. Once a civilized man disguised as a beast, he now saw himself as a god wearing a human mask. Our strength is already sufficient to protect the Empire. With the ascension ritual complete, Axis's ship punched back through a warp rift and into warp travel. The warp itself seethed with green rot storms. The other Chaos Gods were quiet for the moment, but Nurgle raged. Tzeentch, tell me, did you steal my treasure? Did you take my Aisha? Nurgle bellowed, his voice a tearing wound. He accused the Lord of Change outright. Nurgle had returned merrily to his garden after the fall of the human emperor, eager to share his triumph and his latest broth with his beloved little ones, and most of all with Aisha, the life goddess who had dwelt in his green realm. But his joy curdled. His garden had been breached, a quarter of it lay ruined, many of his children slain. Nurgle could restore them with a thought, so their deaths were not the true sting. It was Aisha's absence that wrenched his heart. She had been taken. His first suspicion fell on the universe's consummate trickster, his eternal rival. Khorne and Slaanesh despised one another. Nurgle and Tzeentch were locked in constant enmity as well. They'd formed a temporary alliance to deal with the human emperor, but with him gone, that fragile truce had shattered. Nurgle had every reason to believe Tzeentch had betrayed him. Tzeentch said nothing, neither admitting nor denying, simply silent. The Lord of Change sat upon his throne of wisdom, eyes inscrutable. "Give me back my Aisha!" Nurgle roared. Green energies lashed out at deep blue flares. A purple current wove in as another voice entered the fray. "I'd also like to know," Slaanesh purred. "Aisha isn't much use to you. She would be very useful to me. Give her to me, and I can promise whatever you desire." Tzeentch finally spoke, his tone laced with weary superiority. "You two idiots. Think. I stood beside you both when it happened. Remember carefully. Where did the energy that destroyed your garden world come from? Slaanesh, you can go and see for yourself, and you'll understand." He had had enough of their bickering, and, with that veiled hint, offered the only answer he intended to give. Tzeentch was furious. These two idiots, if only they'd checked the energy fluctuations, everything would have been clear, he fumed inwardly. Nurgle and Slaanesh fell silent for a moment. Their green and purple auras pulsed and probed like two beings weighing whether the Lord of Change was lying. "You can't trust anything Tzeentch says," went their mute verdict. "How do I know this isn't one of your schemes?" Nurgle rumbled, suspicion thick in his voice. "We are mortal enemies, Tzeentch. Your change cancels out the eternity I pursue, and my eternity cancels out your endless schemes." "You stinking green fool. I told you plainly, do as I say." Tzeentch snapped, contempt and impatience dripping from his tone. He often wondered how he came to be ranked with the rest, a mad god of blood and war, a masochist worshipper of carnal excess, and a bloated corpse sanctifying rot and pestilence. What right had they to be compared to him, the master of sorcery and endless transformation? Where had it all gone wrong? "I'll be watching you, Tzeentch," Nurgle warned. "There's always your shadow in any conspiracy. I don't believe you're innocent here." He would never trust the schemer. Even apparent coincidences must hide deeper plots. The two withdrew at last. Watching them go, Tzeentch let out a private, relieved breath. The war with the Imperium had not gone as he had expected. Slaanesh had claimed Fulgrim, Nurgle had secured Mortarion, and Khorne had seized Angron during the first throes of the conflict. Each a Daemon Prince, great trophies. Tzeentch, who'd set his designs on 2 Gene Seed Primarchs, had come away with nothing. Magnus had been his primary prize, the most powerful psyker by far, steeped in sorcery, the perfect candidate for a Daemon Prince of Change. Tzeentch had built elaborate traps and scripts, coaxing Magnus toward damnation. Then Axis arrived from the warp, an anomaly from another universe, and crashed onto Magnus's world, shattering the plan. When Magnus returned to Holy Terra and settled upon the Golden Throne, Tzeentch knew he had lost that prize forever. It was impossible to claim the Primarch under the Emperor's very gaze. He'd tried again with Lorgar, less powerful, but devout, a useful vessel for a Chaos Witch Legion. Axis intervened again. Lorgar was defeated and imprisoned, his fate altered. Frustrating setbacks had left Tzeentch with no choice but to elevate the 11th Gene Seed Primarch from the traitors into a Daemon Prince. Not ideal, but the other 3 already had Primarchs. He could not be the only one without a champion. So he took what he could, grimly content to have at least one Primarch-level servant. Even defeat had its virtues. As the embodiment of change, Tzeentch fed on cosmic upheaval. Axis's arrival had triggered a chain reaction that opened new parallel timelines. The dark, desperate future of the Imperium, 10,000 years hence, might now never come to pass. The universe's history had shifted, and that uncertainty delighted him. Change meant more power, and if he had to, he would even nudge Axis along to stir yet greater waves of alteration. "What will you choose, Dark King?" His cerulean consciousness murmured to a power even darker than his own. The Dark King wished to drag humanity into a bleak, irredeemable future. Axis struggled to steer it back. Even with the Emperor locked upon the Golden Throne, the high echelons of humanity were not yet severed. The webway the Emperor had carved still stood, and humanity had recovered faster than light travel. Only dozens of times light, but once widespread, it allowed colonies and sectors to knit together, diminishing the Imperium's reliance on long, perilous warp crossings. In short order, humanity could rebuild its strength and hope. If the Dark King did nothing, the desperate harvest of despair he coveted might not exist long enough to sustain him. For Tzeentch, that was fine. More turmoil led to more change. If necessary, he might help Axis, not out of charity, but to catalyze new permutations. Elsewhere, Slaanesh accompanied Nurgle into the Plague Garden, not as an ally, but in a mood of detached curiosity, as the two investigated the extent of the theft. Nurgle's only concern was the whereabouts of the life goddess Aisha. "Any luck? Was that lying schemer mocking me?" Nurgle demanded. "Don't rush me," Slaanesh purred, amused. "The situation is odd." He sniffed with a connoisseur's nose. "I detect a few rat traces. A clown, one of the Eldar gods. You should remember, the Eldar fell to me once. I devoured most of their divinity. A handful survived. Aisha, whom you imprisoned. Kayla Mensha Kain, shattered and scattered across the material universe. And the Laughing God, a clown who hides in the webway and yet moves free." Slaanesh, in a grotesque sense the youngest of the Eldar gods he had consumed, was keenly attuned to the scent of his own kind. "Damn it," Nurgle hissed, fury bubbling. "So the Eldar clown stole my Aisha while we fought the Emperor, sneaked into my garden and took her?" The thought was unbearable. His precious Aisha, deprived of the rich broths and rot he had cultivated for her, spirited away and beyond his protection. "Yes, the clown stole your treasure and hid her." Slaanesh's appetite sharpened at the thought. He wanted both Aisha and the Laughing God. Devouring all Eldar divinity would be the ultimate perfection. "Aside from the clown, have you found anything else?" Nurgle pressed. The old rage had not entirely consumed his judgment. If it were only a thread of the Laughing God's doing, perhaps he could accept it. But could that cowardice clown have toppled a quarter of his domain? He had initially suspected Tzeentch for good reason. "I finally see why the Lord of Change wanted you here," Slaanesh said slowly. "I once tangled with Axis. His power is distinct. That energy key, I know it when I smell it. There are traces of chi here. You wouldn't notice it. You never have." Everything since Axis's arrival had been thrown into disarray. The histories the Chaos Gods read in the warp, the future they presumed to know, Axis had upended them. The Chaos Gods exist across time, but even omniscience grows bored of endless repetition. Axis brought variables that thrilled 3 of them and horrified 1. "His influence alters everything," Nurgle said, voice thick with hatred. "A mortal who dares scheme against the gods? Arrogant beyond measure, worse than the old Emperor." Axis's variables and turmoil contradicted Nurgle's philosophy of long, patient decay. The Plague Father most hated Axis and sought him dead above all. Worse, Axis, in league with the Eldar clown, had stolen Nurgle's Isha, an unforgivable humiliation. Slaanesh chuckled. "He does add interest to the universe." For the gods, knowledge of the future is a kind of torture. Slaanesh craved novel sensation. Khorne lusted for fresh blood and endless battle. Tzeentch spun new schemes. Only Nurgle loved slow, inevitable entropy. The sudden upheaval was like a stone tossed into a stagnant pool for the others. Welcome disruption. For Nurgle, it was catastrophe. "No, this is not interesting." Nurgle's roar shook the garden itself. "I will take back my princess. I will reclaim my Aisha." Slaanesh's voice was cool and indifferent. "Good luck, my Green Lord. My palace of pleasure has new delights to explore." He had no intention of joining this fight. Nurgle's quarrel was his alone. "Nurgle, wait." The Green God tried bargaining. "We are not mortal enemies. In the future, I can even aid you against Khorne. Help me now. I want that brat who stole my treasure to suffer. When we're done, the Eldar clown will be yours." "Heh." Slaanesh's laugh was thin. "You know what I want. I want all of them. Clown, life goddess, every last Eldar deity. You want only Aisha. Our goals conflict. We do not combine." He would not ally with a god who had once attacked and wounded him, drawing Aisha into Nurgle's keeping in the first place. No bargain Nurgle made could overcome that. In the end, they parted on poor terms. Nurgle knew who had orchestrated some of it, but Axis was beyond his reach. The Chaos Gods could not manifest their full power in the material universe. The strongest daemons he could send were little more than offerings before Axis. Numbers would not bridge such a gulf. Nurgle's fury swelled unprecedentedly. The Plague Garden trembled. Lesser daemons cowered in pus-slick caverns, shivering. They had never foreseen their benign patron rage so Khorne-like. "Axis, you thieving heretic! How dare you take my Aisha!" Nurgle roared into the warp, impotent to harm the real-world thief. At the height of his despair and fury, a new presence fell upon him, a cold, implacable will laden with utter hopelessness. It descended like a shadow and spoke with a voice of finality. "Perhaps We can join forces. Nurgle's vast form froze. For the first time, a chaos god showed something like horror. You? His pus seemed to congeal. This is impossible. You shouldn't have an independent will. You haven't even been born yet. Why would the Dark King appear now? Chapter 311, The Conspiracy Between the Black King and the Loving Father arrives at the front line. Our universe is not singular. How do you know I was never born? The voice was dark and cold. This is a multiverse. No one ever said there's only one universe. If you already know what will happen 10,000 years from now, then my birth is inevitable too. Impossible. You cannot be born. If you were, the whole universe would be consumed. You would burn everything to ash, Nurgle snapped. The dark will that answered him rippled silently, embedding its meaning directly into Nurgle's core consciousness. The universe is unstable. Axis, that variable from beyond the domain, his very existence is the greatest paradox. He stirred the source of the river of fate. The downstream has been blurred, and through that blur, the upstream can be affected. The Dark King laid out the root of the problem for Father Nurgle. The Chaos Gods could exist across infinite timelines from the moment of their births. Why couldn't the Dark King, standing equal to or greater than they, exist across timelines too? In the warp, and in the truest sense of reality, time was merely the dissipation of energy. What mortals call time was only the loss or change of energy. That meant the Dark King's early awakening was possible. So you woke early? Nurgle's voice deepened with wary calculation. A Chaos God knew what a preternatural awakening like that would mean. That was why the Emperor sat on the Golden Throne, to keep humanity on a path where the Dark King could not awaken. If humanity moved toward a bright future instead of stagnating, the Dark King might arise sooner, upset the balance, and consume the feast the Chaos Gods relied on. The Four sought not the destruction of humanity, but its dependence. Its psychic mass and emotions were their sustenance. Let humanity endure in pain and despair, and the Chaos Gods fed forever. I do not want long speeches. I have one question. Will you join me against Axis? The Dark King said. You want me to help fight Axis? Nurgle repeated, incredulous. Exactly. Axis has disrupted my plans, and one day he could be mortal danger to me. I cannot let him develop unchecked. The Dark King's voice was steady. Ever since Axis and the Emperor first plotted to kill him, he had known their schemes, and Axis, with that strange purple destructive energy from other worlds, could truly threaten him. At first he had dismissed Axis, but the appearance of that energy changed everything. If Axis mastered it, he could annihilate the Dark King. He had to act, and covertly. The Emperor and his human persona must not know. You should know our interests are fundamentally opposed. None of us want you to awaken, Nurgle said. He wanted Axis dead and to reclaim his life goddess, but joining with the Dark King required consideration. We don't actually have so much conflict, the Dark King replied. You prefer me to delay my birth. I prefer to sleep as well, so long as the Emperor remains on the Golden Throne and humanity endures. Humanity's suffering feeds you. The darkness I bring feeds me. The problem is someone trying to wake me only to kill me when I awaken. The other three Chaos Gods won't cooperate. They benefit from Axis's changes, especially Khorne and Tzeentch. Nurgle weighed the calculus. If the Dark King remained dormant, that suited them all. Axis's death would be ideal. What's your plan? How will you deal with Axis? Nurgle asked. He was not about to be used or humiliated, particularly after losing his life goddess. I have a plan, the Dark King said. It will require your cooperation. Green and black energies braided in secret agreement. A perfect, seamless plan. If it succeeds, it will be magnificent, Nurgle murmured. It will succeed. This is our secret accord. You must tell no one, the Dark King warned. I won't tell the others, but can you ensure the one on the Golden Throne never discovers this? Nurgle asked. I have already sown a dark personality within him. In time, that side will grow, and he will lose himself, the Dark King said. Then, may our plan succeed. Nurgle's face split into a cunning smile. Meanwhile, months later, Axis and Guilliman's force arrived at the Imperial Western Front. The arrival came just in time. The Dark Angels, Sons of Tomorrow, Space Wolves, Iron Warriors, and Thousand Suns, 5 legions commanded there by Perturabo and Karl, had been locked in brutal combat with the Raiden. Imperial reinforcements lifted the battered legion's morale, After so long, they finally had relief. The two gene seed Primarchs in charge came to the bridge to meet Guilliman: Axis, Sanguinius, the Lion, Russ, Magnus, and the others. "You've finally arrived, brothers." Carl greeted the Primarchs with visible relief. Perturabo, stoic as ever, nodded in acknowledgement. "You've held the line well, Perturabo, Carl," Guilliman said. "If not for your steadfastness, this campaign might have broken the fledgling Imperium." "Good to see you here. How did things settle on Terra? Is Horus defeated?" Carl asked. "You can be certain of that. The War Master Horus was slain by the Father on Holy Terra several months ago," Guilliman replied. "That's excellent. A pity we couldn't take part," Perturabo said quietly. "What happened in that war? Did we take heavy casualties?" Carl pressed. The question silenced the assembled Primarchs. Guilliman spoke at last. "The Imperium suffered tremendous losses. Countless worlds were destroyed by chaos. Hundreds of thousands of Astartes fell. The Iron Hands, Salamanders, and Raven Guard were crippled, reduced to mere thousands. The Blood Angels and White Scars suffered grievously as well. After his duel with Horus, the Father was gravely wounded. He ascended to the Golden Throne and ceased to communicate normally. He exists now in a state between life and death." The two Primarchs at the Western Front stared in disbelief. "Impossible," Carl exclaimed. "Axis could have defeated Horus in a single move. Why did the Father go to war with him?" Axis gave a wry, sorrowful smile. It was not that he had refused to face Horus. The Emperor had not allowed it. Guilliman's expression tightened as he explained. It was more complicated than that. At the time, Axis was locked in endless battle with a daemon host in the Webway, protecting Holy Terra from within. Horus, meanwhile, had been bolstered by the blessings of the Chaos Four. His power was beyond our worst expectation. No one wanted that war, but it was fought. What remains for us now is to make the Imperium the Father envisioned. "No one wished for this to happen," Sanguinius said, a long sigh escaping him. In the end, the Primarchs on the Western Front accepted the grim reality of the Emperor fused with the Golden Throne. The past could not be undone. The future had to be rebuilt. Chapter 312, Ran Dan Star God Fragment Weapon, Ascension Plan. Guilliman's words fell over the bridge like a leaden weight. For a long moment, no one spoke. At last, the two gene seed Primarchs, Carl and Perturabo, suppressed their emotions. There was no time for grief. The war was upon them. "After this is over, we must return to Holy Terra and pay our respects to Father," Carl sighed. Perturabo beside him nodded. Unlike Lionel Johnson and Russ, who had at least fought in the final decisive battles, they had been posted here to hold the line against the Raiden and had not taken part in the offensive. There was a bitterness in that. "In this battle, Carl and I hardly did anything," Perturabo said. "That is our sin. Your holding the line against the Raiden is the Imperium's greatest contribution right now. Enough of that. Tell me the situation," Guilliman said. He needed to know how the war was likely to develop so he could lead the fledgling Imperium to victory. Carl answered, "It's a stalemate. The Raiden tech edge is small but real. Our troops are braver, and in an open fight, we could actually have the advantage. The problem is their celestial weapons, the Star God armaments. We can't counter those." Star God weapons were the Raiden's ace in the hole. They sealed fragments of star gods within ordinary humans and forged those vessels into war machines. The devices lived barely over a decade, but during that short lifespan, they could unleash the fragments' power in full, wreck fleets by sheer force, shatter planets like glass. What had stopped the Raiden so far were a few human cultivators entrusted to the Imperium, descendants of Axis's cultivators, together with Magnus's cultivator descendants, who used chi energy to counter the fragment's effects. "Those Star God weapons are what we fear," Lionel Johnson said with a regretful tone. "If in the Third Raiden War we had deployed the Void Dragon fragment sooner, we would have turned the tide and perhaps destroyed this Xeno-civilization outright." Axis stood quietly and nodded. In the original timeline, he reflected, his presence had been a pivotal factor in Raiden arms development. In the Second Raiden War, his Super Saiyan display had annihilated their expeditionary fleet, Wardrive's invention, and in trying to counter him, the Raiden had pushed to develop Star God weapons. "This time, I'm here," Axis said, cracking his knuckles. "Let me handle those Star God weapons." As a Super Saiyan, He believed no physical armament forged from a star fragment could withstand him. "Don't hog all the fun, Axis," Magnus said, waving his staff. "I want to test my latest sorcery and see if it can counter those fragments." Sanguinius glowed with golden energy. Two pairs of immense golden wings unfurled behind him. One wielded arcane power, the other a newly attained holy light. Both were eager for a trial by fire. Gilliman smiled wryly and asked, "How many of these star god fragment weapons are we facing?" "4," Perturabo answered. "They've thrown nearly everything into this offensive. It looks like they intend to wipe out human civilization in a single stroke." Without the cultivators, even the gene seed Primarchs would have been at a loss. The fragment's power could be wielded in space and could tear apart warships. The Primarchs, formidable as they were, lacked that specific counter. "It looks like there are just enough for us to divide up," Sanguinius suggested. "Axis and Magnus can each take one, and I'll take the other two." Axis smiled and shook his head. "No, I want all 4. Carl interjected firmly. "This isn't a joke. Those weapons are extremely dangerous. I'd prefer we let Axis handle them all." Around them, the others exchanged glances. Sanguinius's body shimmered with golden light. Magnus had a golden sheen at his brow that resembled an eye. The changes in their companions were startling. Sanguinius laughed softly. "Brothers, don't underestimate me. Since I ascended, I have comprehended holy light. It is a power beyond mortal imagination. Healing, blessing, judgment, and attack. Even without it, after my upgrade, I can reshape planets." "What is holy light?" Carl asked, incredulous. Axis stepped forward to explain. "Holy light is the new power Sanguinius discovered after ascending to what we call a warp lesser god and obtaining a new matching body. It's a blend of spiritual and physical energy, capable of healing, restoring, attacking, and even judging enemies." Sanguinius smiled and demonstrated. His golden wings unfurled fully, and a warm, pure radiance filled the bridge. It was not mere light, it seeped into the soul, comfort, strength, and calm. The exhausted officers and sentries felt rejuvenated. Fatigue lifted, old aches eased, even morale surged. "What a marvelous power," Perturabo breathed. "I feel courage in my heart, and my weariness has vanished." Carl closed his eyes and let the warmth wash over him. "I feel stronger," he admitted aloud. Sanguinius's smile broadened. "You need not envy me. I am the source of the holy light. If I wish it, others can tap into it." Carl and Perturabo stared, still struggling to process terms like warp lesser god and holy light. How had Sanguinius changed so dramatically? How had Magnus evolved? Axis answered their questions in the only way he could, by recounting the Ascension plan. "Magnus proposed the Ascension ritual," Axis said. "With the Emperor's approval, I planted spirit tree fruits on several worlds. For a gene seed Primarch to acquire a body capable of containing his soul, 2 things are needed: a century of chi baptism and more than 10 spirit tree fruits. The result is a physical vessel strong enough for the soul and the ascended powers." "So, that's what you were doing," Carl murmured. "I never imagined a gene seed Primarch could grow stronger still." "Does that mean we'll all gain new energies?" Perturabo asked. "Not necessarily," Axis said. Sanguinius was an archangel by nature and gained holy light when he evolved into a holy angel. Magnus knows magic, and his psychic power is the greatest among the Primarchs. He rose into arcane mastery. My adoptive father, Russ, underwent the ritual but did not acquire a new energy form, yet his combat prowess is comparable to theirs. The Ascension shapes each Primarch differently. Axis looked around at the gathered loyalists. "After this war, when things calm, we can stay on Holy Terra and offer the Ascension to any gene seed Primarch who chooses it. We have the time and the means." A soldier burst in then, breathless. "Honored Primarchs, radar has detected the Raiden fleet. They've already launched an attack." Axis's smile went cold and hard. "They're impatient," he said. "Very well, let's go greet them." Chapter 313, Battle with Randan, Super Saiyan vs. Star God. The Gene Seed Primarchs arrived on the bridge of the Morning Star and crowded around the tactical display, watching the Raiden Empire's warships crawl across the radar. "The warp fluctuations from our arrival have been detected by the Raiden," Guilliman said. "The ripples made by such a massive fleet transiting the warp were like a bonfire lit at the edge of Imperial space to the Raiden watchers. Proof that the Imperium had committed its best forces to the Western Front. To them, this was both a dire threat and a last desperate opportunity to force a final, decisive engagement. They must have realized that Horus, their collaborator, had been taken out. The human armada could now turn and finish them. Still, the Raiden were confident in the superweapons they had forged and intended to crush the Imperium in this battle. They're here, in greater numbers than before. Karl's voice was grim as he brought up the live battlefield map. The dense clusters of contacts were chilling. All-out assault. They mean to strike fast, to break us before we can establish a foothold. Perturabo's voice was flat and analytical. Assault wedge, objective clear, heading for the central core where the flagship is located. Those 4 Star God weapons are held behind the fleet's core as strategic reserves and decisive strikes. Axis, can you reach them? Axis grinned. Golden fire lit his eyes, battle blood already stirring. Humph, that makes it easy. He turned to Guilliman. Fleet command is yours. Karl, Perturabo, Leon, you stabilize the front. Magnus, Sanguinius, we go as planned. Our job is to pull those 4 out and destroy them completely. Dad, you coming? There are 4, so 1 for each of us. Leman Russ laughed and clapped Axis on the shoulder. Thought you forgot your old man, did you? Of course we'll fight together. Axis's smile hid a selfish thought. He wanted to claim those 4 mythic weapons, but Magnus and Sanguinius would each insist on a share. Calling in his adoptive father settled it. They'd each take 1. Good. 1 each. Sanguinius and Magnus agreed at the same time. After the Star God weapons fall, Axis added, we go through and dismantle their fleet. The 4 nodded. Magnus wove a psychic pattern. With his power, the 4 of them were teleported into open space behind the enemy fleet. Post-ascension, the vacuum and cosmic conditions were nothing to creatures who had become demigods. Axis still liked to cloak himself in a layer of chi for comfort, but the others needed no breath, no shielding against radiation. Let me give them a little greeting, Axis said, and with a finger pointed at the nearest Raiden battleship, he unleashed a golden shockwave. The ship erupted, titanic, incandescent, obliterated into a spray of cosmic fireworks. Warriors of the Imperium, prepare to meet the enemy. Guilliman's voice boomed through the fleet. All ships deploy to designated formations. Full firepower. Let these Xenos know the wrath of humanity. After the Great Heresy, many in the galaxy had doubted the Imperium. This battle would prove humanity still held dominion. The Imperial's guns answered in perfect cadence. Macro cannon shells, searing lance beams, nova cannon detonations, raining down like a storm. The Raiden responded with their own horrors. Bioships spewed corrosive spores, acidic masses, and lethal beams. Metal and flesh and energy collided in a cascade of explosions. Debris and silent chain reactions became the new landscape. Axis, Sanguinius, Magnus, and Leman Russ were streaks of light through that maelstrom, bursting out of the flagship's protective field and driving into the Raiden lines. Golden chi flared around Axis as he hit the legendary Super Saiyan state. A golden-green aura, hair wild and spiked, muscles swollen. He moved like a humanoid comet, an indestructible shield of energy deflecting or annihilating incoming fire. Warships in his path were smashed or cleaved in 2 by solid golden chi blades he swung casually. His heading was clear, toward the nearest energy signature on the star map, a cold starlight bleeding greed. Sanguinius was a rising sun. He didn't need thrusters, moving instead on holy light, wings of radiant feathers scattering blades of light that incinerated missiles and fighters. His greatsword threw out ribbons of burning holy flame that cut through the redonned bioarmor like a hot knife. His light purified as much as it struck, inspiring Imperial crews and improving their aim. Magnus fought with arcane precision. Suspended in the void, his arcane eye shimmered as he cast ancient syllables. Blue-purple runes spun into being and combined into geometry, targeted disintegration beams that drained enemy shields and cores, reducing ships to floating metal coffins as life within unmade. He conjured a mirror maze of arcane spaces that sent ships spinning into each other, where psychic lightning and blasts finished them. His target was one of the Star God weapons. Leman Russ fought raw and brutal. Propelled by psychic force, he rammed a Xenos cruiser and tore a great hole in the hull, then transformed into a dozen-meter wolf and howled. That howl shattered eardrums and brains. Crews inside collapsed as their skulls burst under the power. He took down 2 ships before locking onto his own Star God weapon. The four ascended Primarchs tore four gaping wounds in the Raiden formation. The Imperial fleet surged into those breaches, widening them savagely. On the Morning Star's bridge, the Primarchs watched with a mixture of awe and professional appraisal. Even among Gene Seed Primarchs, the power they now displayed after godhood was in a different league. Axis found his first target, a colossal monstrosity of pale metal and writhing tissue, the size of a battleship. Its face was a featureless bone pale mask, and embedded in its chest was a shard that shimmered with cold starlight, a star god fragment. Its arms ended in gigantic scythes of decaying cosmic energy that blighted anything they passed through. A mental roar of hunger and destruction assailed Axis. Ugh, ugly, Axis sneered. He didn't dodge the sweeping scythe, he met it. His fist, wreathed in golden chi, slammed through the void. The impact was cataclysmic. Golden-green chi collided with the eerie, decaying energy. Space twisted and folded. The scythe, an instrument that could blight a planet, splintered like glass under Axis's berserk strength. The shock threw the giant's bulk backward. The star god fragment in its chest flashed, alarmed and unstable. The place where Axis had struck was a blackened crater, bone and flesh and metal cracked and spattered. A silent, rage-filled mental roar filled Axis's head, pain and disbelief that such a small creature could wield such power. "Is that all you've got?" Axis taunted, hovering in the void with his aura blazing. "If that's your best, the game's over." Before the weapon could recover, Axis blurred into motion, leaving only a bright afterimage. He reappeared before the pale mask and drove his fist like a cannon. The mask spiderwebbed with cracks under the strike, high-strength alloys and biological plating splitting like porcelain. The head snapped back, the body staggered in space, and instinctively brought the other scythe around for a sweep. "Pathetic," Axis mocked. He let a hand flash, and from his palm poured a dragon of solid golden-green chi, thousands of meters long, magnificent and terrible in the black. Axis was in a playful mood. He intended to imitate a master's ultimate technique. "Evil spirit, submit to me. Great might heavenly dragon, great Luo incantation," he roared, and the dragon lunged. Chapter 314. Please forgive me. I am also a star god? God of chi energy. Boom. The divine dragon's enormous jaws slammed down on the dark green energy scythe. There was no stalemate, only absolute annihilation. The colossal scythe, formed from cosmic energy, vaporized instantly beneath the searing golden-green dragon flames. The divine dragon's momentum went unchecked. Its huge head, brimming with destructive force, crashed into the chest of the star god weapon, the very core where the star god fragment was embedded. Axis's arm muscles bulged as golden-green chi flared around them. The green dragon's body swelled again, becoming a titanic beast tens of thousands of meters long. For that strike, Axis had copied Goku's Dragon Fist explosion from Dragon Ball. His command of chi was now breathtaking. "Break for me!" Axis made a grasping motion with his left hand. The 10,000-meter-long divine dragon, as if sensing his will, tightened its coils around the shattered star god weapon like the mightiest chains in the universe. Axis even channeled a sliver of chi into the dragon to control it directly. The massive head reared back, and from its maw poured a concentrated torrent of golden-green energy, an eruption of destructive fluctuations that could rend material structures, directed straight at the core fragment in the weapon's chest, like a primordial light splitting heaven and earth. Axis seized the advantage and showed no mercy. He blinked and appeared at the star god weapon's head, hands coming together, and then raised to unleash a coalesced golden orb of annihilating energy. "Come get a big one from me. Ultimate Urgy Blast!" The golden-green sphere tore through the pale mask and the body behind it, consuming them. Axis laughed wildly as he formed and hurled orb after orb of cyan-green energy at the creature. No, the star god fragment let out one last silent shriek, an animal cry of pure physical terror and disbelief. It could not comprehend this power. This was not warp chaos, not the psychic technologies of the old ones, nor the energies of other cosmic star gods. It was an ultimate fusion of raw kinetic might and concentrated energy, entirely rooted in the material universe, but transcending the fragment's understanding. Its physical rule defenses were like paper against this violent, barbaric force. Brilliant fireworks of light erupted across the cosmic void. Sound could not travel in space, but every Imperial fleet saw the dazzling display. The Zidon Star God weapon looked pale and powerless before Axis. It simply could not withstand the might of a Super Saiyan. If Axis had intended to end the fight quickly, he could have released his full power from the start and obliterated the foe. Cosmic Star Gods were potent, but only a true, whole Cosmic Star God warranted Axis's full attention. A fragment used as a weapon? No offense, he barely considered it worth his time. The Golden Torrent continued, vaporizing several Zidon cruisers that had tried to help. In the end, there was only a yawning energy void and the dying afterglow of the Star God fragment. Fragments could not truly be destroyed. When their energy was exhausted, they drifted silently in the void like spent husks. First one down. Axis flexed his fingers and then scanned the battles of the other Geneseed Primarchs. This particular Star God weapon had been laughably fragile. Axis half wanted to go steal someone else's opponent. For now, he would see if he could truly annihilate the fragment. If he could, it would mean future encounters with other Cosmic Star Gods might be handled the same way. It was rumored that Star God fragments were indestructible, even space Necron technology, and the Emperor had failed to destroy them because they embodied the rules of the material universe. Axis's palm glowed with golden-green ki. A terrifying wave of energy struck the drifting fragment, which immediately gave a plaintive wail. Do not destroy me, powerful being of the physical universe. I can feel that your fundamental power comes from the real universe. We are not enemies. The fragment's energy emitted a fluctuation that translated into meaning Axis could understand. It spoke directly into his mind. You possess intelligence. Which Cosmic Star God are you? But you attacked us first, and now you say you are not our enemy. Axis's interest was piqued, he answered mentally. The fragment responded, My original name is Devourer Gorkless, a powerful entity born of the material universe. I did not wish to be your enemy. I was being controlled. Before, the space Necrons forced us. Now it is these ants. You have freed me from command. I should thank you. We Cosmic Star Gods wield cosmic energy born of the physical universe. We are naturally hostile to the warp. You might even be one of us. The fragment's assessment stunned Axis. Why would this Cosmic Star God think a human was one of them? He hadn't hit it so hard it lost its mind, had he? I know you doubt me and think I trick you. Gorkless continued in Axis's consciousness. But hear me. Every Cosmic Star God is different. The energies we command differ. No two are the same. We each govern a rule or a power of the physical universe. The energy you just used is not chaotic warp power, nor is it the forced reality bending of Old One's psychic tech. It is pure material energy, pure motion. It acts directly on the material universe, immensely destructive, efficient, and primordial. Though the form is unique, its foundation, the principle by which it drives cosmic matter, is no different in kind from the Void Dragon's plasma control, the Nightbringer's entropic absorption, or my own Devourer guidance of material decay. We are all material manifestations charged with administering the universe's forces. The difference is, your rule leans toward ultimate kinetic burst and energy compression release. Mine favors forced disintegration and entropic guidance. Axis frowned. Gorkless's analysis was uncannily logical. Chi, Cyan energy, was indeed about pushing physical potential to its limits, harnessing spirit energy in ways that seemed to break laws, but were actually extreme applications of them. Beerus's destruction energy was another pure manifestation of the material universe's laws, an erasure of existence. There were real similarities in origin to how Cosmic Star Gods manipulated physical law. Since arriving in this universe, Axis had experimented with psychic powers. Magnus's projection technique had given him a taste, but that psychic projection was weak compared to his chi. His chi was on another level. Gorkless's mental tone shifted toward a conclusion. You must be a new Cosmic Star God, one whose name we do not yet know. Perhaps your rule recoalesced and was reborn long after the ancient Cosmic Star Gods fell. Or perhaps you are a wholly new form born by the universe itself in answer to the threat of the warp. That would explain why you are so powerful yet young. You have not devoured stars, have you? Axis considered the question. Cosmic Star Gods gained immense power by consuming countless stars early in their lives, during the flowering 60 million years ago. If their plan had succeeded, they might have even sealed off the warp. The The fragment's ignorance that Axis was a transmigrator from another universe was striking. Either it truly didn't realize, or it said these things to save its existence. Can you teach me how to absorb stellar power so I can become a cosmic star god? Axis tested Gorkless. Absorbing stellar energy is an instinct all cosmic star gods possess from birth, the Devourer replied. When we take in stellar energy, we often lack self-awareness. The process is instinctive, but the most delicious food in the universe is souls. The Devourer's confession chilled the thought space between them. Souls were the finest nourishment. That was why the cosmic star gods had sought to seal the warp. They did not want the souls of the material universe to flow into that chaotic maw. They wanted to keep that feast to themselves. Chapter 315, The First Battle of the Ascended Primarch, Defeating the Star God Weapon. I'm asking if you can help me absorb stellar energy right now, not wasting time with words. Axis's palm flared with golden-green light again. The threat in his voice was unmistakable. I'm asking if you can let me absorb stellar energy. Don't stall. Wait, young clansman. If you help me become whole again, gather my fragments, I will recover my full memory. Then I can teach you how to devour stars, the Devourer replied quickly. Axis sneered. After all that, he only wanted help to revive. This Devourer really had a plan. I don't like lies, and you're trying to deceive me, Axis said coldly. I know cosmic star gods well. Our powers look similar, but our essences are different. If you're only trying to tempt me into reviving you, you're making a grave mistake. Destructive energy pulsed from Axis's palm, a clear promise that he would eliminate the Devourer if necessary. The only thing the Devourer could offer that might interest Axis was the ability to devour stars, and Axis's current psychic power could only absorb a planet's power. Planetary power and stellar power were not on the same level. Star God fragments cannot be destroyed, the Devourer shot back angrily. Even if you are powerful, we are embodiments of the universe's laws. I have dignity. If you intend to strike, then I will not say another word, being of another world. Heh, I thought you'd keep pretending to be one of my clansmen. Axis smiled. You're done pretending now. Although the cosmic star gods were not as mighty as the Chaos 4 gods, they were not weak by ordinary standards. They were stronger than most lesser deities. The Life Goddess and the Laughing God had seen through Axis, so it was no surprise the cosmic star god could as well. This creature had only tried a clumsy ruse to buy itself time and survive at Axis's hands. I didn't deceive you. I recognized your identity early on, the Devourer said. Even if you're from another universe, your power is more like ours, star gods, than those warp abominations. We have common interests. Why not cooperate? I speak to you as an equal. Other mortals are like ants before me. At first, the Devourer had intended to deceive this outsider, telling small lies to strengthen his claims of affinity. For example, suggesting Axis was a manifestation of a cosmic star god or a star god born in the material universe to fight the warp. From your words, you seem to know I have dealings with warp deities? Axis asked. How did this creature know Axis had dealings with the Life Goddess, the Eldari Laughing God, even Khorne? Is that strange? The Devourer replied, looking toward the distant battlefield. Aren't those entities fighting my brethren just lesser gods of the warp? On the far field, Sanguinius, Leman Russ, and Magnus had each found their opponents and begun intense duels. They were all too familiar with the type of power used by these three mighty beings. Except for Sanguinius, whose power clearly came from within the true universe, the energies used by the other two were warp-born, leaving no doubt about their nature. What puzzled the Devourer, however, was the physical might of those three. In the real universe, apart from star gods, beings of such terrifying physical strength should not exist. Their bodies were, in many ways, no weaker than a star god fragment. Axis was a little speechless. They were talking past each other. Axis had meant his reference to his alliances with true warp lesser gods. The Devourer assumed Axis meant the three Geneseed Primarchs fighting on the field. The battlefield itself raged. Unlike Axis's side, the three Geneseed Primarchs did not entirely crush the star gods, but they held the advantage. Sanguinius faced a star god weapon of grotesque form, a giant eyeball fused to countless octopus-like tentacles. Pale bone-like armor flaked and regrew across its body, and the tips of the tentacles shimmered with sickly green decaying psychic power. Each swing tore through space, leaving corrupt scars. The weapon had no fixed core and attacked like a storm, trying to erode and disintegrate Sanguinius's divine radiance with endless cosmic corruption. Evil, before the holy light, you shall become nothing. Sanguinius's voice rang like a great bell. His golden wings spread wide, the holy light casting him like a god of pure gold. Each swing of his holy greatsword severed a tentacle wrapped in decaying psychic power. No filthy blood spilled from the cuts, only the sizzle of purification, rising golden mist. Holy Nova. Judgment. A pillar of holy light pierced heaven and earth like divine punishment. The eyeball-shaped weapon emitted a silent, piercing shriek in the pure radiance. Its massive form burst into golden flames from within and finally dissolved into points of light under the holy purification. Sanguinius stood faintly within the beam, 4 wings spread like a true archangel come down. The star god weapon that had fought him was defeated. Its outer material shell was utterly destroyed, revealing a star god fragment within. Magnus's opponent was a precisely engineered star god weapon, like a gigantic mechanical spider fused to a crystal mountain. It moved with uncanny speed, its 8 metal limbs wrapped in energy fields, and crystalline spires on its back fired concentrated psychic beams that disintegrated matter and set spatial traps. It was a war machine, long-range strikes and spatial manipulation to suppress its foe. Arcane magic phase shift. Magnus tapped his staff and became ethereal. The cosmic beams passed through him like mist. Arcane magic energy reversal. He pointed his staff at a charging crystal spire and sent back the accumulated energy. The star god spider screamed in outrage. The remaining spires flared, and thick spatial distortion fields, like invisible constrictors, lunged for Magnus from all directions, attempting to fix and rend him. Humph, so-called cosmic star gods after all, Magnus snorted, and his arcane eye flared with unprecedented brilliance. Arcane, spatial anchor, arcane, spatial fold. A barrage of arcane strikes tore into the spider-shaped weapon. Magnus pressed his advantage. Arcane magic, singularity burst. He formed a singularity with arcane power, sucking the opponent into it. The mechanical spider screamed as it reached with its remaining limbs, trying to grip the void and resist the terrifying pull with psychic power, but it was futile. Its metal shell was stripped away by the invisible force. Intricate internal structures twisted and collapsed. Armor and crystal protections were ripped asunder. The pulsating container holding the star god fragment, along with its surrounding spatial structure, was forcibly yanked free of the spider's body and dragged helplessly toward the expanding black singularity. The spell was theoretically a warp black hole. It shredded the outer shell of the weapon. Yet the star god fragment inside still seemed to endure. Nonetheless, Magnus had defeated his opponent. Leman Russ's fight was the most brutal of all. His adversary looked like a giant metal gorilla fused with a rock colossus. Immense strength, heavy energy-wrapped fists, and thick rock armor made it a walking battering ram. It could also unleash devastating breath attacks. Russ became a silver giant wolf nearly 20 meters tall, ringed in a storm of materialized psychic power and an icy aura. His silver fur was like hardened alloy, muscles bulging with explosive force, claws and fangs crackling with ice and psychic energy. There were no elegant techniques here, only raw, primitive violence. The Wolf Lord lunged like a bolt of silver lightning. The rock beast roared and swung a fist wreathed in destructive fields. It was a pure contest of strength. In the end, Russ prevailed. His massive wolf claw, wrapped in destructive power, slammed down and shattered the star god weapon into countless fragments like toppled masonry. Russ reverted to human form amid floating shards of ice and crystal and roared his victory to the sky. Beside him, a star god fragment drifted free. The defeat of the star god weapons accelerated the battle's outcome. The Zidon forces were already beginning to rout. Axis, are you done over there? I've taken my opponent down, but the star god fragment remains. My power can't destroy it. Sanguinius reached out to Axis immediately. Same here. My arcane energies can't destroy the fragment, Magnus answered. Same here, Russ added. Don't rush. Let's secure our captives first. Star god fragments are valuable, Axis told the 3 gene seed Primarchs over psychic channels. Then, turning his attention back to the Devourer, he added with a cool, sharp edge, I think your three companions might give me a different answer. Don't you agree, Mr. Devourer? Chapter 316, Destroy Randon, the Dark Lord's Conspiracy. Almost simultaneously, the dust settled across the three battlefields. The Holy Radiance, the Arcane Singularity, and the Wild Frost Explosion, three utterly different powers, each smashed the Star God weapon in ways that left everyone reeling. The cheers from the Imperial fleet nearly fried the communication channels. On the Zidane main brainship, however, transmissions collapsed into chaos and despair. No one had expected that a full-scale assault meant to crush the Imperium in a single stroke would instead end in an even more disastrous defeat. It wasn't only Axis and the three ascended Gene Seed Primarchs who had unleashed their might. Axis's son, Kratos, had also ascended into Super Saiyan-like fury, showing terrifying strength. The Raiden's destruction had been decided. What remained of the battle barely needed Axis's intervention. An ocean of Imperial warships and countless Space Marine boarding parties were more than enough to finish the Raiden fleets. Powerful being, I do not yet know your name. If you wish to speak with my three brothers, do so. If their answers differ from mine, you may seal me at once, or try to kill me, intoned Devourer Gurkless. If these star god fragments could draw energy directly from stars, they wouldn't need a main body. By consuming stellar energy, they could evolve back into full cosmic star gods. That was precisely why they had to be contained. My name is Axis. Conversation can wait. You are my prisoner, Axis said. He wrapped the fragment before him in a sheath of potent chi and carried it to the Morning Star. The fragment was enormous. Even after losing vast energy, it remained a behemoth tens of meters tall. Only the prison cells of the Morning Star could hold such a thing. Axis notified Magnus, Sanguinius, and Old Man Russ to bring their captured fragments to the Morning Star. The three Primarchs answered without hesitation and used psychic teleportation to return. Axis, what do you intend to do with these fragments? Sanguinius asked. Keep them sealed for now. The Morning Star has a special cell to imprison them, Axis replied. Be careful, Axis. These things aren't simple. The sealed Imperial records show cosmic star gods are effectively indestructible. They can only be bound. Prepare the most secure cells you can, Guilliman warned from the bridge of Macragge's glory. He had already consulted the archives and understood how the Emperor had once defeated and sealed a star god fragment on Mars. Such beings could manipulate cosmic energies and gradually recover strength over time, too dangerous to take lightly. Leave it to me. The Morning Star houses technologies you haven't seen, Axis said. After the brief exchange, Axis and the three Primarchs began transferring prisoners. We'll leave this to you. We're heading back to the front. With a few cordial words, Sanguinius, Magnus, and Leman Russ departed the Morning Star to resume command of their legions. Axis remained long enough to escort Kasha to meet the Time Necron chronomancer Grandu. Mr. Axis, you do know how to surprise me. It's been ages since I've seen such garbage. Grandu sneered the moment they met, openly mocking the star god fragments. Among the Necrons, cosmic star gods were loathed, the lowest of the low, beneath slaves. Every Necron, regardless of rank, felt only hostility and hate toward them. You damn traitors, one fragment sent out a mental lash. We granted you supreme power, freed you from cursed flesh, allowed you to ascend, and how did you repay us? Ha ha ha! The only thing you cosmic garbage brought was destruction and curse. You devoured our people's souls, Grandu roared. That was the bargain. Your souls were food, useless for anything else, but usable to increase our strength. We didn't mistreat you, one fragment countered. No, how do you have a soul? The Necrontyre's souls were devoured long ago. Another fragment sputtered, sensing something wrong. There was something unusual about this Necron. Perhaps the universe smiled on me and let me meet Mr. Axis. It's not my original soul, but it's a soul nonetheless, Grandu retorted with a cold snort. Enough. I didn't call you here to relitigate old grievances. I want you to build a special prison for all 4 of these fragments. No problem, right? Axis interrupted. Axis was well aware of the bitter history between the Necrons and the cosmic star gods. At first, the conversion, the gift of mechanical immortality, had been mutual consent. But once the Necrontyre lost their flesh and souls, they rebelled. They outwardly obeyed the cosmic star gods, helped defeat the old ones, then turned on their so-called benefactors, shattered them into fragments, and drove themselves into hibernation. A terrible lose-lose ruin had followed. No problem, Mr. Axis. We excel at this. These four are mental fragments once imprisoned by our dynasty. I will build specialized confinement devices. They'll even provide a continuous energy source. The Morning Star could run perpetually, Grandu said, visibly delighted. Torturing these beings was a pleasure for him. That's what I want. No mistakes. Axis nodded. Mr. Axis, trust us. Working with us brings far more value than any warp entities. Help us, and the rewards will be beyond imagining. We could uplift your entire race's science and technology. One of the fragments said through a mental reach. Don't trust them, Grandu snapped. Cosmic star gods lie. Deceit is their nature. I've already learned that, Axis said, thinking of how they had once tried to trick him, claiming kinship even. We mean no deception. Help us revive and feed on vast stellar energy, and you too could ascend to a cosmic star god, the fragments still tempted. Ha! That's the funniest suggestion I've heard. You and we are life of the material universe, but cosmic star gods are something else entirely, Grandu scoffed. Axis offered no reply. He and Grandu moved the four fragments into a giant underground chamber beneath the Morning Star, where Grandu had already prepared specialized devices to restrain them. When it came to binding cosmic star gods, no race was more skilled than the Necrons. One by one, the fragments were chained, sealed, and locked within the Morning Star's prison. Axis intended to leave them confined for a while and then return for further interrogation. On the main fronts, the Imperial fleet rode a wave of unimagined victory. The campaign devolved into mop-up. The Imperium pursued the Rydan nests relentlessly, determined to annihilate the Xenos threat. 5 years passed. Under Guilliman's and Axis's leadership, the Imperium threw massive forces into the Rydan territories and overran every resistance. The vast Rydan Empire, composed of hundreds of alien factions, was systematically wiped away. Axis intervened from time to time to obliterate major Rydan fleets. The legions, led by his descendants, carried the rest of the work. Axis wanted to plant spirit tree fruit on a few more worlds, but Guilliman refused. These conquered systems were future human colonies. By right, they should be preserved. Guilliman only granted Axis 2 planets deemed unsuitable for settlement, which Axis was allowed to transform by planting spirit tree fruit. All other worlds were kept intact for colonization. The final battle came on the Rydan homeworld. When the human armada arrived, the Xenos had no power left. Facing the might of the Imperium and the inexorable advance of its armies, they could only await extermination. The warp routes around the system were being blockaded by human warp subgods, Magnus, Sanguinius, and Leman Russ, whose elevation made warp travel substantially safer for the Imperium and virtually impenetrable for anyone else. With 3 subgods patrolling the warp, escape was impossible. Even tearing into the warp required forces the Rydan no longer possessed. Without warp flight, the Xenos could not flee their system. Their doom was inevitable. To demonstrate the Imperium's authority, Guilliman decided not to occupy the Rydan world. He chose to utterly destroy it. In the name of the human emperor, by the rights bestowed upon us by the great emperor, he broadcast across the fleet. Guilliman ordered Axis's psychic world tree, Axis's mental tree, launched against the planet. Its vast roots plunged into the soil, devouring all life and extracting the very nutrients that sustained the world. The living planet was turned into a dead rock. When the globe was hollowed out and dead, the fleet launched cyclonic torpedoes and bombardments that shattered the crust and reduced the planet to stardust. When the war ended, Axis and Guilliman led their forces back to the Imperium. Vast numbers of human settlers streamed in, formally incorporated into Imperial territory. The Morning Star and the Golden King slipped into the warp together. "Father!" "It is my honor to fight at your side," Kratos cried, elated to have fought alongside Axis. These years of war had been the happiest time of his life. He had seen his father at full force, a living incarnation of fury on the battlefield. "You did well yourself," Axis said, clapping Kratos on the shoulder. Though Kratos' psychic destructive power did not match Axis' chi, his growth had been prodigious. In combat, he was not inferior to the ascended Primarchs. Kasha looked on and smiled genuinely as father and son shared a rare moment of warmth. Far from the battlefield, in a hidden region of the warp, two energies conversed, green energy with black energy. Axis has returned with the Imperial fleet. Our plan can proceed. Are you certain it will succeed? Came a voice. Nurgle's. Don't worry. I guarantee it will succeed, came the reply. It had better. I hope that golden one you've possessed will not upset our scheme, Nurgle warned. This time it's not just him, the Dark Lord said. All the Gene Seed Primarchs are my targets. The Imperium I seek is one without Gene Seed Primarchs. The present Imperium, led by the Primarchs, was not what the Dark Lord desired. He would see to it that the age of the Gene Seed Primarchs came to an end, and plunge humanity into the darkness and despair he coveted. Chapter 317. The first time we established an army. Why are you two being treated differently? When Reboot Guilliman returned to Holy Terra triumphant, he staged a brief victory parade. The legions that had not been present at the final battle with the Zidane, the Salamanders, Iron Hands, Raven Guard, White Scars, and Imperial Fists, had spent years recuperating, and each had rebuilt to over 100,000 battle brothers. The legions that had fought also received massive reinforcements from their homeworlds. Sanguinius's Blood Angels exceeded 150,000, Magnus's 1,000 Sons pushed past 100,000, Axis's Legion swelled to 150,000, Kratos's Legion rose to 180,000. The Blood Angels' total strength reached 200,000, the Space Wolves stood at 160,000, the Dark Angels held 170,000, and Guilliman's Ultramarines remained a terrifying 450,000 strong. Even the Sons of Tomorrow and the Iron Warriors kept more than 120,000 each. In total, the Space Marines still numbered around 2 million, and less than 10 years after the Horus Heresy, the Imperium had remarkably recovered to a near pre-war prosperity. Yet no sooner had the campaign against Zidane ended than Guilliman summoned all the Gene Seed Primarchs and, without preamble, announced a sweeping military reform. The reform is as follows, he declared, except for Axis's Legion and my Ultramarines, which may retain strengths above 100,000, all other legions under the Gene Seed Primarchs will be reduced to roughly 10,000 men. The chamber fell into stunned silence. The Primarchs stared at Guilliman in disbelief. Why disarm their legions now after a great victory? Several faces hardened as they turned to Axis, suspicion flaring. Was this a deal between Axis and Guilliman? Only 2 legions were being spared. Axis spread his hands. Don't look at me like that. If I could have kept 100,000 men, I'd be all for it. I'm not the instigator. I was against reducing everyone to this level. Rogel Dorn, Primarch of the Imperial Fists, leaned forward. What will become of the demobilized warriors? Will they be discharged, or will you treat them as you once treated the Thunder Warriors? Guilliman answered calmly, prepared for objections. The Space Marines demobilized from other legions will be reorganized into independent chapters of 1,000 men. The chapter model is more flexible for Imperial deployment and better suited to responding to frequent, localized conflicts across the Imperium. The Great Crusade is over. Humanity must now consolidate and recover. The chapter system is the optimal structure. Karl, known to some as the Second Primarch, was the first to explode. I object. He slammed his fist on the table, voice rich with offended fury. Father has ascended to the Golden Throne, and the traitors are punished, but the Imperium is still mighty, and we Primarchs are still here. How can the Great Crusade simply end like this? I second that, Perturabo growled. He and Karl had always been close. Now they stood shoulder to shoulder in outrage. Father may be bound to the throne, but the Primarchs remain. There is no reason to break down legions into scattered chapters. Then Lionel Johnson rose, the eldest of them all. You had best provide a convincing reason, he said slowly. Axis, you just claimed to object. What is your explanation now? Around the chamber, Leman Russ, Ferris Manus, Vulcan, Corax, and Sanguinius watched Guilliman with cold incomprehension. Guilliman's reply was sharp and uncompromising. The lessons of the Great Heresy are clear. One of the root causes was the enormous concentration of power in a single legion. The betrayal of one Primarch meant the defection of over 100,000 elite Astartes. Leman Russ's voice was cutting. Are you questioning our loyalty, Guilliman? Where were you during the defense of Holy Terra? Carl and Perturabo fought tooth and nail at the front while you were on your way. Gilliman's face grew darker. This is a joint decision by Axis and myself. He tried to deflect the blame. Axis bristled. I disagree with Gilliman's original plan. He wanted everyone reduced to chapters of 1,000 men, including the founding legions. I fought to secure a compromise, 10,000 men per legion. That is what I argued for. You should be thanking me. As for my own legion, I act under a direct order from the Emperor. My legion has a special mission and must remain at 100,000. Before Axis could finish, Magnus's voice cut through the room. Calm and inevitably disturbing, he announced, I will voluntarily divide the 1,000 sons. I will retain 10,000, and the remaining 90,000 will be reorganized into 90 independent chapters. As a master of the unseen, Magnus had a sense of the deeper forces at work. Resistance felt futile. Axis waved his hands in exasperation. Can't I have a moment of peace? I'll convince them. But the damage had been done. Axis's claim to special dispensation, combined with Gilliman's position as regent, sparked a fury of envy and pride. If one Primarch could keep 100,000 men, why not all of them? If Gilliman was to remain powerful to counterbalance Axis, then his brothers demanded equal standing. Then I also want to keep 100,000, came the cry. My legion must remain at 100,000. Any surplus may be split into chapters, another added. Voices multiplied. Seconded, seconded. Except for Magnus, who had already acquiesced, almost every Primarch lined up against Gilliman's plan. Their unity was born of pride and the simple principle of equality. If one of us is treated differently, none of us will accept it. Gilliman had expected resistance, but not this ferocity. He tried to appeal to the greater good. This is for the Imperium, he said, suppressing his anger. The Great Crusade is over. Humanity needs to heal and consolidate. Such vast legions are no longer necessary. His words fell on deaf ears. For all their loyalty, the Primarchs were sovereign in their pride. Even those who had once supported the Codex reforms found themselves standing with their brothers now. The Council degenerated into chaos, tensions running high, and Guilliman's frustration drove him to a dangerous claim. Anyone who opposed the disarmament was acting against the Imperium. The accusation shivered through the room like ice. Had the Imperium, having quelled the great heresy and defeated external foes, now been brought to the brink of civil war by its own Primarchs? Months passed with no resolution. Leman Russ, Carl, Fenris, and others even approached Axis privately, urging him to accept the regency and replace Gilliman. Axis refused outright. Such an act would be an open declaration of war, and he would not be the one to start such bloodshed, even if he believed he could win. At last, Magnus pressed Axis to reveal the truth. You know the root of this dispute. It is time to speak. Axis sighed, and at the next assembly he stood and told them plainly, Brothers, stop this pointless quarrel. The breaking of the legions into chapters is the Emperor's command. A few faces registered incredulity. Was the Emperor still capable of giving orders with such clarity? Then a vast, sacred psychic presence slammed into their minds. For a brief, shattering instant, each Primarch felt their soul touched by a power beyond dispute. When the pressure eased, the Emperor's will burned in their thoughts like a brand. They knelt, one by one, and in unison declared, We respectfully obey the command of the Imperial Regent and the Imperial Co-Regent. Our legions will undergo military reform. Thus, the storm that had threatened to split the Imperium was ended not by compromise, but by the implacable will of the Emperor. Under that undeniable decree, the disarmament and reorganization of the legions into chapters was set in motion. Chapter 318, The Warp Entity God, the biological father of the Goddess of Life. The Emperor's will was inviolable, and this time every gene seed Primarch had been confirmed. Even from the Golden Throne, the Emperor could still reach out at critical moments. The Imperium of Man had not lost its true master. The Geneseed Primarchs had not lost their father. Humanity still had the Emperor. The reform of the legions was well underway. Axis had detached 50,000 men from his legion and split them into 50 chapters. He even asked Kasha if she would leave to serve as a chapter master, but she refused outright. Her own legion numbered 100,000. Axis rarely commanded it directly. Kasha ran the real affairs. Why should she take charge of a single 1,000-man chapter? On the other hand, Kratos' contingent could only retain 10,000, and the remaining 100,000-plus warriors were to be redistributed into some 170 chapters. Many of those who branched off from the son of Axis wanted chapter names like Axis' Spear, Axis' Hammer, Axis' Sword, Axis' Fist, Axis' Fury. Those names weren't enough. Some named their subchapters after Kratos' and Axis' weapons. The Golden Legion split into subchapters with names like Golden Guardians, Golden Flash, Platinum Chapter, Golden Claws, Golden Spears, Golden Fangs, and Shining Knights. Each new chapter remained closely tied to its parent legion. Even after the legions were reorganized into chapters, if a Gene Seed Primarch issued an order, the Gene Seed Brethren could still gather. Every chapter required reintegration of their names and assignment of a homeworld, along with the resources of that world. Except for retaining the original founders' 10,000-man legions, most legions were broken up. Chapters of every size would now be spread across the galaxy. The Great Crusade was officially over. Axis finally entered a quieter period. He returned to Nuceria to live with Kasha, staying off Holy Terra. There was an open webway entrance at the edge of Nuceria, and soon after arriving, he stepped through it to the territory of the Life Goddess and the Laughing God. Axis, you've made us wait a long time. Life Goddess Aisha complained the moment she saw him. You said you had to go handle things. You were gone more than a decade. We were delayed, Axis replied. There were many matters to settle. Humanity had just finished the Great Heresy, then faced a massive Xenos empire, and after that we had to reform the military. He had rushed over at the first chance. Had he stayed on Holy Terra, his fate might have been no better than Guilliman's. Now that you're here, quick, create a body for me. I can't wait, Isha said. Axis glanced over her world. It had changed since he'd left. Small animals were still everywhere, but now many Eldar were present as well. It seems you've already made contact with your people. Aisha nodded. While Axis had been occupied, the Eldar had learned of the return of their mother goddess, and under the Laughing God's clown troupe, some had come to greet her. The first were the Craftworld Eldar, then groups of Exodites. Even the Dark Eldar had sent envoys requesting she return to Kamara. Aisha had refused them outright. She knew the Dark Eldar had fallen. Their plea wasn't born of respect, but of fear, hoping she would open a life barrier to stop Slaanesh from devouring their souls. Aisha loved her children, but she would never recognize the Dark Eldar as her own unless they abandoned their perverse ways. The Dark Eldar are beyond help, Axis said. All right, let's begin. I'll make you a body. He produced a cultivator seed and several barrels of juice pressed from spirit tree fruits. The juice, saturated with raw life energy, would serve far better than ordinary nutrient solution. Aisha produced her own ingredient, a large vessel of blood gathered from more than 100 pure Eldar virgins, to serve as the genetic template. Axis dug a pit 2 meters deep on the life world, planted the cultivator seed, and first poured in the Eldar blood. The seed drank the fresh blood as Aisha's spirit began to commune with it. Axis then poured the spirit tree juice, filling the pit with potent life essence, and placed his hand close to the soil to inject his chi. The soil, soaked in Eldar blood and spirit tree juice, glowed a soft, rich emerald under the steady infusion of Axis's tremendous chi. The seed, now infused with Aisha's spirit, absorbed the surrounding energies at an astonishing rate. The air above the pit seemed to warp, a visible vortex of life force formed. Axis kept up the energy output, beads of sweat forming on his brow. Shaping a physical body for a deity consumed far more than he had anticipated. This was not only about crafting a powerful shell, but about creating a vessel capable of bearing Aisha's vast divinity and ancient memory, far more complex than any ordinary cultivator. After an uncounted span of time, the emerald light in the pit converged and was absorbed into the central entity. A great green sphere rose from the life world. The entire planet seemed to cheer. Then, crack! A crisp sound broke the hush. The green shell fractured, and a hand, fair and slender and slick with viscous life fluid, thrust outward. Axis ceased his energy injection and stepped back, a mixture of fatigue and anticipation on his face. From the green sphere rose a figure, liquid emerald cascading from her like a living spring, the scent of fresh grass following her. Her hair fell in emerald waves, the shade of new leaves, gleaming with the sheen of life. Her face resolved into a beauty beyond mortal comprehension, a combination of Eldar refinement and a divine harmony born of life itself. Her eyes opened, pupils of deep emerald that seemed to hold the vitality of an ancient forest and the weight of primeval wisdom. She stood tall and flawless, wrapped in a light green skirt woven from condensed life energy, ethereal and flowing. A warm, overwhelming aura of life radiated from her center, spreading outward like ripples. The air of the entire life world filled with the intoxicating freshness of life itself. The Eldar life goddess, Isha, had at last a true flesh and blood body, a warp entity made manifest. Axis could feel, with clarity unlike anything he felt for the gene seed Primarchs, that she was strong, perhaps stronger than he first estimated. Isha lowered her head and flexed her fingers, feeling strength surge through flesh and blood for the first time. Standing before her was the man who had given her this body. A strange closeness bloomed within her. There? Aisha's voice was clear as mountain water and laced with emerging tenderness. The words surprised her as much as it surprised the laughing god beside her. Axis wore an expression that seemed to say, "As I expected." The cultivator had fed on his chi, and the being grown with that chi carried an unexplainable intimacy toward him. In the creation of this body, Axis had, in effect, become its true father. "Ah, my good daughter, Daddy is here," Axis said, half smiling. You tricked me." Isha realized, with dawning amusement and no trace of anger, that she had fallen into a deliberate plan. She felt no hatred for Axis, only reverence and a filial warmth. "Come, call me Daddy," Axis urged. Aisha's eyes widened. Her beautiful face flushed with incredulous shock and a faint, embarrassed anger at being outwitted. She could feel the chi core flowing inside her, rooted in the same source as Axis, and that intimate bond to the origin of life felt like an invisible chain. It made it impossible for her to harbor any real hostility toward the man with the mischievous smile. Instead, there was an odd sense of blood-tied dependence. Axis's grin broadened, pride and a kind of darkly amused fatherly affection on his face. "Scheming, my dear daughter, how could you call it that?" he said. "This is a gift of life with a little familial tie attached. Didn't I give you a perfect, top-tier divine body that lets you fully unleash your power? You can use chi energy now, something even my own son hasn't mastered. The return on investment, you've made a killing. A huge profit, my foot." Aisha stamped her foot in anger. Her filial feelings toward Axis were real, an instinct rooted in flesh and soul, but they clashed violently with her pride and identity as the Eldar life goddess. Even if she wanted to hate him, she couldn't. He felt like a teasing father. When the name finally rose to her lips, it came out without thinking. Father. You're truly wicked." The laughing god, Qiao Gaoqi, was on the floor rolling with laughter, tears spilling from his eyes. Because the Eldar laughing god lacked a proper body, his tears congealed into energy crystals. "Ha! How marvelous! A family drama among gods, a kind father and an annoyed daughter," he howled. His harlequins clapped and cackled in grotesque delight, some even taking quills and parchment to record the scene. This was history. The great Axis had given a body to the Eldar Mother Goddess, and the Eldar Mother Goddess had become his daughter. "Later, we'll stage this," one harlequin giggled. "Someone play Lord Axis, someone the Life Goddess. We'll spread it across the galaxy. It's the most thrilling show." "No," Aisha snapped, cutting them off. She couldn't let this be spread. If the Eldar learned that their Life Goddess had been tricked by a human and become his daughter, her reputation would be ruined. As the Eldar Life Goddess, image mattered. "You may laugh and play, but do not tell anyone. You know the consequences." Chaoki stepped forward and used his power to erase the memories of every Eldar who had witnessed the scene. For now, at least, 1 foot of the Eldar pantheon had been placed on Axis's chariot. Aisha steadied herself, tears streaming, each one crystallizing into a pure spirit stone. These were valuable. A single shard could protect an Eldar soul and allow it to move through real space undetected by Slaanesh. Axis watched, curious whether the stones would be useful to humans. He remembered a tale from the 40K era of a naive human who met an Eldar woman, thought she was human, and was killed by a space marine. The Eldar woman preserved his soul with a spirit stone. He also recalled a deleted character rumored to be a human psyker with an Eldar father and human mother. "I'll keep this secret," Axis said reasonably. "Call me father in private. Outside, you're still the great Eldar mother goddess and a life goddess with a physical body." He reached out and patted her head. The laughing god sealed the scene away. If Aisha had to call him father in public, she'd rather never leave her life god star again. Still, she nodded. It was easier to accept the private intimacy than to lose face forever. "Aisha, you should be able to use chi energy now," Axis continued. "Since you're a god, your chi should already be at a divine level. Divine chi is different from ordinary chi. It has many applications. Try it." Aisha's ears were pointed, a reminder that she had always been a top-tier subspace god, ranked just below the Chaos Four's minor divinities. If she were placed in the Dragon Ball universe, she would be at least a world king, an intern world king god, capable of creating life and planets. Axis intended to instruct her in some of that craft. She condensed a sphere of white chi in her palm, the energy flecked with emerald green and thick with life force. With a cultivator's body, she could channel chi. Her chi lacked the Saiyan ferocity Axis wielded, but it brimmed with living power, richer and purer than the life energy simulations Axis had been using. Its quality even outstripped the divine power she had known. Aisha had once thought chi was merely an auxiliary tool to resist warp erosion and assist in nurturing life. Now she saw it might become her main path, chi born from divine essence, more formidable than she had imagined. Axis nodded with satisfaction. His own manipulation of chi was still crude. He hoped Aisha, as an Eldar goddess with this new form of chi, would devise new techniques. Although she did not control as much chi as he did, the quality was higher thanks to her godly nature. "You can develop other chi techniques," Axis said. "In my world, some use chi for interstellar instant transmission, across hundreds, thousands, even tens of thousands of light years. The method is to use your chi to lock onto the chi at the destination, break the space barrier, and instantly relocate there." He knew only the broad principle. He had never learned to perform it himself. "Instant transmission like that would be revolutionary," Qiao Gaoqi admitted. "If you're talking about moving from the warp into real space, the warp gods can do that. But true instant transmission across vast distances in real space, independent of the warp, none of us can do that. Not even the fastest starship can match it." "It's a powerful ability," Axis continued. "Chi has many avenues of development, and you are a god. I believe you can master instant transmission. In my universe, the Earth god could bring Goku from the underworld to the lookout. World King gods can teleport freely, even between universes. Work on it, Aisha. My instant transmission may yet be perfected by you." "Father, the god of Chi is perfect for me," Aisha said, excited. "It's the best suited energy I've encountered in the real universe. I'll cultivate it properly." "In our world, there is a title called World King God," Axis said. "They're not always the strongest in direct combat, but their methods outstrip imagination. They represent life. They create planets, cultivate life, and sometimes appoint planetary gods. They foster world kings and grand world kings. You, Aisha, as a life goddess, your divine power is roughly at the level of a world king god. Aim that way." If Axis ever rose to become a god of destruction, a world king god like Aisha at his side would suit him perfectly. Angels? He scoffed. He didn't need them. They were merely father hunters for a god of destruction. Creating planets and cultivating planet-level gods? Aisha's voice trembled with excitement. "That is exactly what I want. Spreading life, making races. This feels like the old ones." "The old ones?" Axis asked. "They were tremendously powerful," Aisha said. "In some accounts, they created the Eldar. 60 million years ago, the warp was calmer because the old ones had advanced psychic technology. There are rumors they once rivaled the Chaos Gods." The Eldar had known only the era when the Old Ones dominated. One World King God can wield powers on the scale of the Old Ones? Axis mused. "Then develop that well. I'll need some of your God of Chi in the future." Axis had been forward-thinking. If not for Huang Laohan's persuasion, he might not have allowed Aisha to take on the God of Chi at all. Now, with Aisha able to cultivate true Chi and possibly channel World King-level powers, Axis's ambitions, Super Saiyan God, God of Destruction, felt closer. "There can be more than one World King God," he explained. Theoretically, 5 official seats, 1 Grand World King and 4 Directional World Kings. There are also many intern World King gods, unregulated in number. That explains why they resemble the old ones in function, if not scale, Aisha said. But even dozens would still be fewer than the old ones in number. Perhaps, were the old ones incredibly powerful? Axis asked again. Very much so. Some say the Eldar were either created by them or genetically uplifted by them, Aisha replied. The old ones shaped the early cosmic order. Good, Axis said. Cultivate well. One day you might create planets, life, even new gods. In that case, you'll be invaluable to me. Aisha's face brightened with anticipation. Then abruptly the air chilled. A brutally violent, bloodthirsty chaos divinity descended. Chapter 320, Khorne and the Emperor. Collaborate to plant the tree of God above the life god star. A horrifying, planet-sized bloody face suddenly loomed, a daemon prince's visage as vast as a world. The Eldar on the planet stared up at the monstrous apparition in terror. With their potent psychic senses, they recognized the aura at once. Khorne, one of the 4 chaos gods. The laughing god, Qiao forced a wry smile, and with a casual wave of his hand, damped the panic among the Eldar with a subtle psychic soothing. Could you be a little less dramatic next time? He joked. You frightened our people. Khorne ignored him. A gesture like this was of no consequence. His true partners in this scheme were Axis and the life goddess who had attained World King God power. Qiao smile tightened, but he kept laughing. After all, a clown must always laugh. You're early, Axis said. As you can see, the life goddess has already grown to something resembling the World King God of my system, though she still has room to mature. Khorne's eyes gleamed. He, too, coveted the World King God's domain. I'm glad I didn't miss this, he rumbled. Aisha, life goddess, impressive. If you fully become the World King God Axis speaks of, able to freely shape planets and spawn life, I will even protect you. In Axis's system, the World King God stood on a level comparable to the God of Destruction in rank, though weaker in power. For the Chaos Gods, a universe full of intelligent life was ideal. Minds bred souls, emotions, and after death, those souls would swell the warp and enrich chaos. The Chaos Gods wanted species to flourish. That would be an honor, Aisha replied from Axis's side, eyes flashing toward him. But protection won't be necessary. My father will protect me. Her tone carried the boast of a daughter claiming her parents' shield. It's all right, Khorne said. More life means more war and blood, exactly what I want. I'm still learning this power, Aisha admitted. Creating planets on my own and life will take time. Time is precisely what we have, Khorne said. You could enter the warp, train in my domain. You're overreaching, Axis cut in. The cultivation of a god of Chi is not so simple. The warp and the god of Chi don't mix. It's best done in the real universe. The webway is the only other option. Now that Aisha had a physical form, Axis even contemplated moving the life god star near his Nuceria so she would be safer, beyond Slaanish's grasp. The Chaos Gods could not fully manifest in the real universe. At worst, they could send demon princes. Axis did not have to battle. The Golden Legion or Aisha herself could handle any threat. I am ready, Axis, Khorne said, eager. I can lend divine power whenever you need. Aisha has a suitable body. We can begin the plan. No problem. We can start anytime, but we must wait for one more arrival. Axis looked up. A golden, sacred power descended, and a giant golden face the size of Khorne's loomed into being. The Emperor, seated on the golden throne, lending part of his power to Axis. Axis had truly gone all out this time. With the Emperor's help, I have more confidence in our success, Khorne said, staring at the golden colossus. The Emperor said nothing, only returning a cold, unreadable glance. His enmity with the Chaos Gods was absolute. Then let us begin. Aisha, you will use your chi to stimulate the mental tree to grow into a divine tree. Khorne and the Emperor will supply the raw divine power. The two of you will also purify that power so it can be safely converted, Axis instructed. What about me? Qiao piped up weakly, raising a hand. You'll keep watch and evacuate the ordinary Eldar on this world, your followers, Axis said. The Laughing God's talents were best used on logistics and morale. Fine, Qiao grinned, waved, and left to shepherd the Eldar away. When the population was clear, Axis produced the mental tree seeds. Only 20 remained. He had already used the others. Aisha floated up and drew vast quantities of life essence. channeling it through the god of Chi she had newly gained. Axis planted a seed. It stirred, but did not germinate. Even with Axis's Chi, something was missing. "One seed isn't enough," Khorne observed. "Use more." "Drop the rest and condense them into one," the Emperor's voice commanded in Axis's mind. Axis agreed. He planted all 20 remaining mental tree seeds together. Aisha poured her life force into them, and Axis converted every ounce of his chi into life-state energy. Under that combined input, the seeds began to merge, 20 seeds fusing into a single kernel the size of a walnut. Deep at the life god star's core, the walnut-sized fusion seed gorged itself on life essence. The planet visibly withered, forests browned, rivers shrank, the once lush life aura thinned. Aisha pressed both hands to the ground, lips bitten, and unleashed the god of Chi from her body, like a furnace. She drew on the chaotic, unstructured energies of the warp, and through her nascent World King God form, tried to transmute them into pure life energy to feed the starving seed. It wasn't enough. The seed's hunger was vast. Her conversion was only a trickle. "Not enough. Nowhere near enough," Aisha said, voice trembling. Khorne laughed, a sound that shook the webway. The blood-red face spanning the sky spewed a torrent of crimson divine power, condensed chaos energy born of slaughter and rage. It surged like a breached sea of blood toward the life goddess. Aisha braced and flared a vibrant green light around her, pure life chi. When Khorne's tainted wave struck that light, there was no explosive clash. Instead, the blood-raw power seemed snagged and stripped. Aisha had become a living filter. She bore the strain, swaying, beads of sweat on her brow, and forced the violent crimson through the green, pulling its corruption apart. Layer by layer, the defiled energy was cleansed and reformed into a vast, more benign warp primal energy she could channel into the planet, replenishing the ravenous seed in the planet's spent stores. At the same moment, the golden eyes of the Emperor's colossal face flared. A column of sacred psychic power shot toward Axis, a pure, anti-warp force full of hatred for chaos. That power would also need conversion by Axis before it could feed the seed.